72 damage both times. And both times he left damage on the board.
Oh no! Why are his cards green? Right, but why are his cards green? He got there! Oh. Sick!
It's so powerful, all these rushes. I can't even believe the value he's got.
Lamby with a pop-off. Well deserved. He stays in for another series.
It's Championship Sunday here at Hearthstone Grandmasters and the final day of the initial season before we head to playoffs in just a couple short weeks' time. And even though all our players left in are all guaranteed that spot in the playoffs, so much to play for, both in terms of prize money, getting the top of the standings to get yourself a better spot in playoffs, and also just good old pride for all of our players trying to show that they are the best of the best here in Asia Pacific.
Yeah, pride within APAC and also pride on the global scale, perhaps, as we figure out who we're sending through to Grandmasters last call to represent APAC. I've heard that some of the other regions are almost secure as to who they're sending, and they're truly fielding some great players. So I'm super excited to see who will come out on top. After all is said and done, after the end of today, we will know who our top 8 players are and the order in which they are seated. And most importantly, it's the last chance to gain any points.
That's right. Yeah, it's very important to not only get up to the top 4 playoffs, as we were saying, but those last call spots. All of our players, I think, still in contention for last call. Some of the players, Posesi and Alutemu, a little bit lower down, do need those points a little bit more, but that's going to be our second match of the day. First of all, we got okasinnsuke versus Chonsu, and I believe that was trying to run down the format that we have for this week of Grandmasters, which is going to be last hero standing. We had Conquest in the first week and new mode last week in Trio, which was very exciting to work through. Last Hero Standing, though, has led to an interesting metagame, kind of more of a homogenous metagame than I was expecting from Last Hero Standing. I feel like Conquest sometimes leans itself more to that. But here, it seems like we've got ourselves down to a meta of mostly you ban away Druid, because it's just the best deck right now, and then it kind of branches out from how you counter Demon Hunter as the other main deck that players are bringing, where Quest Rogue seems to be a good counter to that. Shaman's a good counter to Quest Rogue, and then Control Warrior is a good counter to Shaman and the Quest Rogue, but then it gets beaten by the Demon Hunter again. It all starts to get very cyclical very quickly, and given that any deck in this format can just get a clean sweep, you always need to make sure you have one of those counters enabled.
That's right. I think in the earlier days of this weekend, we had the chance to see bans other than Druid coming out from both players that were expecting to not have to deal with it and players that sort of had a counter queue. But now that we've ended up with a top 4 where all of our players are priority banning Druid, there is no chance we're going to get to see that today, I think. And the match tracking sheet would support that theory. However, this now means that the queue order, particularly in game 1, is going to inform a lot, because once Druid is out of the picture, we do sort of have players with that lineup that has the cyclical relationship you were talking about. Quest Rogue into Demon Hunter into the Warriors, and the Warriors into the Quest Rogue. So the mind games as to the game 1 of each series could be a very big deal, but it's not as though we've only seen the matchups go in the way we've expected them so far. In fact, we've seen reverse sweeps all on a single deck, of Warrior in particular being sort of the star of this weekend.
Yeah, exactly. The loss for Alan at the end of his series versus Chonsu was particularly heartbreaking, losing Quest Rogue versus the Libram Paladin, which should be a very good matchup. I saw some rumblings of players talking about Dragon Man managing to lose like an 80% matchup I saw touted in Mazaki Mage versus the Control Warrior, which I don't know if I'd go quite that far. But it does show there's always upsets available. You can never truly predict who is going to be the winner and who will walk away with 3,150 dollarinos for that first place. Of course, it's worth so much more than that if you can qualify through to the playoffs and win it. In 2 weeks' time, we are going to go through to the playoffs, where 8 players will go in from each region. 1 player will come out as the World Championship representative, which is going to be so much fun to see. All the APAC players playing against all the other regions of the world again. Cannot wait to see how that will go. Hopefully ending in a third year in a row going towards Asia Pacific. But of course, I'm getting well ahead of myself. As for the moment, it's just about racking up those points and trying to finish first or second in the standings, as then you get a free win going into the playoffs. And so for okasinnsuke and Chonsu in particular, who are right towards the top of the leaderboard, just getting one more win pretty much solidifies them there, just guaranteed at the top.
That's right. We cannot overstate the importance of these last couple matches. Maybe for the likes of Alutemu and Posesi, who are incidentally facing each other in the second match, there's also a chance that their results imply who will be ending up in the 7th and 8th spots, which contrasting to the 1st and 2nd slots, they got an auto loss instead. And that is a whole world of a difference going into playoffs, where you have one last chance to make it through to the World Championship. But taking a look at what went down yesterday, we did start off with Dragonman versus okasinnsuke. Dragonman with this very cool Kazakhstan non-fell Demon Hunter with the Razor Glaive Sentinels, getting very quick wins versus okasinnsuke in the first 2 matches of the day, but it just fell short at the end when it faced up against the Warrior.
Yeah, of all decks, this weird Kazakhstan Demon Hunter with like the brute draw package was unable to get the job done, and as Dragonman went on, it kind of felt like the nerves were getting the best of him, going for a Mizaki Mage turn that was never ever going to work out, on the slim chance that his opponent had exactly Embers of Ragnaros in hand and generated it the turn after playing Kazakhstan. I think he just got a little bit flustered. And then the Shaman versus the Warrior, he gave it a good effort, but it's just a disastrous matchup, and we saw okasinnsuke coming out the victor right on top of the leaderboards. Now Chonsu versus Alan looked like it was going to be a series mapped out right from the start. As soon as Alan won that first game, we could track it back and forth. Okay, the Quest Rogue comes for the Demon Hunter, Warrior for the Quest Rogue, Paladin for the Warrior. But then in the final game of the series, there was a huge upset.
Yes, with that Libram Paladin getting there in the end, even though Alan was very close to taking the unfavorable in Game 4, it was only because the Samuro dodged bombs like Neo in the Matrix that Chonsu was able to keep adding buffs to it and actually get that last bit of damage through that he needed. It was a real close one, and so was this Quest Rogue versus Paladin in the end. Alan, truly a heartbreaking series of draws that he just kept cycling to look for any out that might have been there, but there was simply no way to clear the board. Chonsu with a very well-deserved victory, though. I think he's been playing on point recently.
I agree completely, yeah. I think he, got the good hand at the end, but played it very, very well at all points along the way. Gur, again, it's an unfortunate way for him to go out, as we really disagreed with pretty much every choice made by the Druid along the way. And from there, even though the rest of the series was a lot more like it, we saw a very cool game with the Priest copying the SI7 Operative, permanently keeping it stealth, applying the Apotheosis as well. Unfortunately, even though he could heal up to 30 every single turn, Posesi could deal 30 in a single turn with the Battlegrounds Battlemaster. And then the Mage on the other side just couldn't even get its foot in the door, which led to Gur falling down and being eliminated from Grandmasters for the next season. And again, from Mighty, another player who we expect such great things from after a monumental first season in Grandmasters, just had a bit of a mare yesterday.
Yeah, I did see that he tweeted out that there were some disconnect issues in Game 1 that threw him off. The lag ended up having him miss the end of the turn, and then perhaps the rest of the series also got thrown off because of that. But I will say, after that Game 1, it didn't seem like there was very much he could do. Alutemu just completely on a tear with the good burn shaman draws and executed to perfection. In particular, I feel like Alutemu has a really good understanding of what spell damage minions to go for from Primordial Studies, balancing the burn and the card draw, and knowing when to try and get board damage and whether that's still relevant. And that burn shaman could be his secret weapon in this final bracket here. Not too many shaman players left. I believe it's only Alutemu who has it still, and he's been performing very well with it, so I'm very curious if that could maybe be the secret to victory.
I think it could be, yeah. Against Posesi in particular, who has the Priest, I do think that puts Alutemu in a very good stead. Against a potential Warrior, if okasinnsuke ends up winning this one, I think maybe it gets a little bit tougher for the Shaman to get the job done. But it just shows the rippling effects that even the player winning on the other side of the bracket can have on your chances of winning the entire week, even if you are in the other semi-final. But as I was saying, okasinnsuke is going to be in our first game. who has the Control Warrior, a deck that has been, I think, on stream, the only deck he's won with so far. He 3-0'd with it on day one against Give Please, and then yesterday got the reverse sweep, obviously, against Dragon Man, winning all 3 times with his Control Warrior. And I've got to say, in Last Hero Standing, it just feels like such a perfect deck for this format.
It really does, because this warrior has strong polarized matchups against some more aggressive decks like that rogue, but it also has teeth to deal with unfavorables here and there versus Libram Paladin. If you get an early enough Kazaka-san, you can generate a win condition that's not originally there. And even against Demon Hunter, which we have put mostly to be in the Demon Hunter's favor, a warrior who navigates their armor total very, very carefully can still get out of range of expendable performers combos. But we do know that Chonsu is going for the Demon Hunter that has only that and not the Kazaka-san, so there's no potential for a treasure battle in that particular matchup. But over on the bans, we do see nothing of a surprise here. I think Druid on either side being taken away is the expected outcome, even though okasinnsuke is not running Kazaka-san Druid. The Ramp Druid actually has a pretty similar matchup spread.
Yes, indeed. And I think that for okasinnsuke heading into this first game, the counterability of the warrior is what puts him in the lead, in my opinion. It's just the paladin, again, for Chonsu, that could maybe upset things, because paladin is a real wild card where we know it to be good against demon hunter. It's pretty good against warrior as well. Weak against rogue, but we've seen it win that, of course, already. And so even though I put as my prediction okasinnsuke, because I do think the way this kind of goes back and forth eventually ends up favoring okasinnsuke, it has got to be said that in the immediacy, Chonsu does have himself a nice starting matchup with Quest Rogue versus Demon Hunter.
That's right. And it's funny we bring this up because on paper, when we were starting to test the matchup, it's like, is Quest Rogue really that far in the lead? Because they seem to want to get on board, and Demon Hunter is very good at getting you off board. But it's sort of the consistency of the waves from Quest Rogue, the curve type of getting on board rather than the zoo approach, and that curve leading up into very big threats from either SI7 Smuggler once you have enough SI cards played, or just the Informant itself, easily getting up to the realm of 7/7, 8/8. Sometimes even more threatening than the Scab's quest reward itself. That can be very tough for Demon Hunter to deal with every single turn back to back. And also just the fact that stealth is a thing means that they sometimes have to rely on Fel Barrage, and that's a very limited resource to actually remove minions. And with all of that in mind, perhaps the most interesting part of the matchup, in my opinion, is how the Quest Rogue navigates around Glide. Because in the early game, where the Fel Demon Hunter usually likes to get the Glide in outcast position and play it early, the Rogue doesn't actually have that many cards in hand. They can try and get the Glide down when Scabs is in hand, but I think a good Rogue player will also just try and navigate it so that when they finish quests, they can play Scabs immediately.
And that's one of the other interesting things about Glide in this matchup is, you know, like you said, early on it's rarely good. And I've also realized that later on in the game, Demon Hunters have to kind of struggle to get their glides out of outcast position, because your opponent might have a hand of 5 or 6 cards, but you know that about 4 of them are just going to be gizmos anyway that don't do very much at all. And so leaving them stranded with a very weak hand is often more important than getting the glide in outcast position. Unless, of course, they get some kind of a slow start, play the swindle, and then maybe a coin glide at the start of the game. Can be good enough. But for the most part, like you say, Rogue just trying to be as aggressive as possible, throwing down all these threats and making Glide as bad as possible for their opponent. Chonsu, as we can see here, winner of week 2 and already back to being in the semi-finals again. He is right up towards the top of the leaderboard already. I haven't figured out yet if he's guaranteed top 2 no matter what, because he's currently joint first place alongside okasinnsuke and Mighty, 8 points apiece. So obviously, if either okasinnsuke or Chonsu win this, they will be decidedly in first place. But there's still a chance for Chonsu to finish in that top 2, even if he loses here.
Yeah, we will get back with more information on tiebreakers as that becomes more clarified. But the important thing, of course, is to just get as many wins on the board as possible, so you don't even have to be worried about how the tiebreakers shake out. And Chonsu, as a player who is in that top contention, getting that first or second place seeding is huge. Get that free win going into the playoffs makes you feel so much more comfortable. And I think it's just gotta be such a big mental turnaround for Chonsu, who in previous seasons admittedly was very middle of the pack. I don't think he had many particularly good results, maybe a weak win here and there, but never really stood out as one of the top players, even though we know he is a world championship caliber player. But this season he has turned it around after a slow week one, has just been completely on fire. He's been tearing up ranked ladder as well with many different decks, and I just feel that his play has really lived up to his results so far.
I agree completely. Yeah, he feels like he's been really putting the reps in, as we know from multiple rank 1 tweets as of late. He's been grinding away on all kinds of different decks, and that is, I think, what works for him. Just making sure he's comfortable in the expected play patterns of the deck and is not flustered whenever he has to make a lot of decisions very quickly that can often trip you up, as we've seen from some of the other players who just feel maybe, as I said, not quite so cognizant of the common patterns you expect to see, and therefore you can dispense with some of the mental footwork you have to do to be able to grind through all the different options available. To start things off for okasinnsuke, I am very tempted with a Kurtrus Demon Render being kept in this starting hand, as I've often found that's actually more important than getting quest completion necessarily against the quest rogue.
And it does feel more tempting on coin, but I feel like it might still be a little bit too ambitious. Even though quest completion isn't super important, you would still like to get cycle as efficiently as possible, and keeping the Kurtrus in a position like that could potentially get some of your outcast cards locked in until you're able to coin out Kurtrus at turn 5 the earliest. So I don't mind okasinnsuke going for the full mull, but we see a bit of a grimace from him when he sees that the card that comes back is the Jace, which is also going to make outcasting cards pretty difficult.
So obviously this Chaos Strike could be used to just try and cycle through to better cards, but you always have to be hesitant when using these cantrip effects that just draw you one card at a time in Demon Hunter, because it means if you were to draw into a need for greed, a spectral sight, it's harder for you to complete the quest. But okasinnsuke clearly saying here, my hand is so bad that I need to find something else to do immediately.
Yeah, that's right. It's gotten to the point where even if he gets a glide in non-outcast position, I'm pretty sure he would instantly cast it just to get a reroll on his cards. He does have at least a good amount of removal available, and now that he's seen a smuggler used for 0 cost and knows it's coming back for either 1 or 2 cost next turn, that Arcanist Fell Scream or Arcanist Fell Barrage could get quite a bit of value later. You see okasinnsuke considering just going for the Deadeye early, which I think is totally fine. The Expendable Performers combo is hardly ever a win condition in this matchup, because usually if you've lived long enough to the point where you're able to do that, you've won the game anyway. Gonna hold on to it in the end though, fair enough. Maybe he doesn't want it to get hit by an SA7 agent or extortion. But for Chonsu, the pickup of a second smuggler is pretty interesting, but it looks like he's just gonna go for the Tenwu while it's available. Sometimes Tenwu's a little bit hard to set up. So the smugglers building up the SI costs the hard way, right from 0 to 1 to 2.
And getting some decent results along the way. This peasant obviously pretty much demanding an answer. And a 3-1 as well. Hey, that's not bad at all. Even though they're very vulnerable to a Fell Screen Blast, at least okasinnsuke is kind of demanded to do something here. Even if it's just hero powering down the peasant, he can't just focus entirely on like a glide, say, and ignoring the board.
I agree. It's definitely enough to warrant not glide here from okasinnsuke. He is just going to start off with the Spectral Sight, hoping to get quest progression with a single tradable card or Chaos Strike, but it's not there. And that makes the turn a bit more awkward because he can still clear with the Immolation Aura and the Coin Hero power if he wants to also just get rid of the Smuggler. But that means that it's so many draw effects used without actually progressing the quest, and that never feels too convenient.
Yeah, I think with a Shadow Step and a Tenwu already used, this coin can be much better utilized than just killing off a 1-1 to round out the turn. Chonsu again presented with a decent turn in SI7 Assassin that I think would complete the quest in that instance, given that it cost 4. But instead trying to search for the more powerful options, finding that second Shadow Step is actually so clutch here and such a sick punish for okasinnsuke leaving it up.
And he can also just get it to a 4-drop, right? Because he can play the operative first. Or even a 5-drop, I might be miscounting.
If it doesn't count itself, then yeah, I think just a 4-drop for them.
Right. I always still just confuse whether the nerf is in effect or not. But yes, that's right. It should just be a 4-drop here, which is definitely respectable, around average 4 health. And that's just out of range of Arcanist Fellscream Blast, which is decent enough. Chonsu is just trying to be annoying here, essentially, until he gets these scabs in hand. And that's when the pressure really starts to ramp up.
So the obvious turn here is Fury to take out the 1-3 and then Arcanist Fell Barrage. But do you think you're allowed to use the Arcanist here when you have a Fellscream Blast in hand? Is it important to save that for the healing like it is in so many other aggro matchups? Or do you just like the board clear prioritization?
I do like the board clear because okasinnsuke's been very healthy throughout the entire early game since he's hardly taken damage from Chonsu's minions. So I think it's fine to have a Fellscream in hand without the Arcanist. There's also a lot to be said for just getting these Fell spells expended, because at this point, okasinnsuke doesn't even necessarily want to glide to progress quest. Like a very early Jace could be a nice board swing, potentially even an answer to a stealth Scabs. But if he is looking to glide in the near future, then it still kind of supports the argument for using 3 cards because he wants to dump as many as possible. He is going to go for the Fury into Arcanist Fell Barrage plan. Very clean, mana expended efficiently, and Chonsu can refill with like the 4th smuggler of the game.
Yeah. And I mean, the other important thing is that even though he wants to glide at some point, probably to complete quest, he's actually building himself not a half bad Jace here this game with Chaos Strike, Double Fury, Fell Barrage, Fellscream Blast. It's already probably going to clear off most of a board. And if he can get himself an Eldraki Warblades, it's probably going to heal him for like 10 or 12 damage at the same time, which is very decent, just as an 8-mana play if that comes up later on.
Yeah, that's right. And the Jace actually, the timing works out well going into the Scabs turn. That's not to say that Jace by itself will necessarily be enough to clear Scabs without an additional Fell Barrage played prior. But say okasinnsuke top decks that or Eldraki Warblades, playing Jace into the Scabs turn from Chonsu is a pretty good response. And Chonsu here, capability to finish quest with Extortion plus Smuggler or Smuggler plus Assassin. I'm kind of leaning towards just keeping the Assassin in hand. Okay.
Interesting. I mean, because I think he was actually on 5 out of 6, he could have played Scabs on this turn with Extortion plus Scabs, which is I think probably what the main bulk of his turn was running through. Which is a really tough proposal, actually, because obviously you want to play Scabs and Stealth it on the same turn, right, is the general play pattern with Rogue. But against Demon Hunter that's just used an Arcanist and a Fell Barrage, it's actually kind of tough for them to clear Scabs.
Could be. There's still Kurtra's hero card. That's always a big punish. The rushing bats should be enough to get rid of an unstealth Scabs in that regard. And Chonsu still has built a relatively threatening board here. The order always a little bit weird because he couldn't quite get the 6-drop without sacrificing the just the combo potential of the Assassin.
Very big draw here, though, in the the Eldraki Warblades, because before this he could definitely have been considering Glide, and you still could consider Glide here. But like I said, this really unlocks the Jace Darkweaver on the other side. He can just go for heal a bunch on this turn with Hero Power Fury Warblades, heal a bunch more next turn. Honestly, you could consider starting to send some of that damage face as well, and trying to get there in the later turns with some kind of render Kurtrus lethal.
It does set up for a lot of healing and damage with Jace, but it doesn't quite set up for a guaranteed clear on the stealth scabs, because we know the pool of fell spells only includes one barrage so far, and no immolation auras, I recall.
I don't think so.
So there's no order of fell spells here that would actually clear 9/7 stealth scabs. And that's problematic for Okashinsuke, because even though he does get to heal back up a lot with the Eldraki Warblades, he doesn't discount the possibility of a Battlegrounds Battlemaster still pushing lethal somehow.
Ooh, I think that was a glide off the top, though, for Okashinsuke, which is very interesting, because this hand is pretty nice to glide away. You have a read on what they're being... Well, 3 actual real cards and then 5 gizmos, but even then, they're still nice to clear off, just to get the hand size nice and small, and especially because you can find some other way of trying to actually clear this board, if not this turn, then at least next turn.
Oh, but the problem is, if you don't clear it this turn, will there be a next turn? Because being only at 24, and say he doesn't get that much healing available with the Warblades if he goes for the Glide, then Chonsu is simply a Battlegrounds Battlemaster away. In the end, Okashinsuke goes for it, knowing that the Jace, best case scenario, would still leave a stealth scabs. I think the best it could have done is like cast Fell Scream on the 4/3 and hit the 2/3, and then Fell Barrage could maybe clear those minions. Not particularly likely, but he does end up with I-Beam from Studies, decent. Kurtrus loaded up for next turn, has the potential to get there, and because of the I-Beam and clearing the 4 damage, he is safe to just Battlegrounds Battlemaster. Is he safe to BGBM plus Wicked Stab? No, I think he's just dead to that.
18, 22...
Oh, 2 off, sorry. I forgot the Eldraki Warblades here.
Yeah.
Flanking maneuver is an interesting one.
What does that give? Chaos Strike?
Chaos Strike?
That's pretty good.
Yeah, you'll take it for the cycle. So Foxy Vanessa Chaos Strike, or he could just keep trading with the SI7 Extortion, because the BGBM could still be big here even if it's not lethal. Leaves himself the mana to do that if he starts with a tradable, but doesn't hit it. So it looks like he's going for the Chaos Strike. Oh, 10 Stirrup!
It's so close here. I mean, the problem is now for Okashinsuke, however, that even if he can find a way to get Magtheridon into a clear on the next turn by getting like Arcanist plus Fellscream Blast, there's not enough room on the board anymore. So he's going to have to clear it the old-fashioned way with just perfect back-to-back draws, or an insane Kurtrus that I don't think is going to be getting anywhere close, actually.
No, I don't think so. And Chonsu just chooses to completely load up on the board, make the Magtheridon as hard as possible to activate. Foregoing the Chaos Strike, I think, is still fine here. He's not particularly weak to Glide either. And Okashinsuke is simply getting beat down. The bats, we cannot see how much attack they have, unfortunately. But even if like a single bat could clear the scabs, there's still too much damage on the other side.
Yeah, he hasn't attacked every turn this game, has he? Which is kind of what you need to have done to get them up to 7. So yeah, I don't see it.
If he can trade into Arcanist, and then I was gonna say double jump into like Immolation Aura, that's a clear on everything but the scabs at least. But no mana left to do that, so he's just gonna go for the Kurtrus, and they are actually, with this last attack, 1 individual is enough to get rid of scabs. Very nice. Probably clear of Foxy, max damage off the board. Although the mole also represents a bit of a threat.
Yeah, I guess there are enough Demon Hunter damage spells to be worth clearing it off, as it's BGBM off the top. So that's 10, 15, 16, 19 damage.
Right, with the dagger and the Chaos Strike. Just a little bit short, but I think it's fine for Chonsu to cash in at least some of this damage. He can even like move the Vanessa, like after she goes face, the second attack can kill the bat, and then he can get the Wind Fury on the 2/2. So that's still the same amount of total face damage, but he gets to clear the bat as well that way.
Strike! Then strike harder.
Okay, so chooses to not clear the bat here with minions. Is he going to use his face or the Foxy on the far left? I think that's just kind of missed damage if he is planning to clear the bat. Yeah.
And I do think you should here, right? There's some worlds where you can die here. Like, what if they just have Jace? That feels like it's kind of close.
True. Even performers? Does that do anything with Felfire Deadeye? I mean, the mana would be there, technically. But this performers on its own does not represent lethal. okasinnsuke doesn't have the mana to press his hero power that many times. However, he can get up to, like, well, he can get the full amount of board clear from it, but that would involve trading the bat. If he doesn't trade the bat, then he can get 12 points of board clear available, and there is 16 points of health on Chonsu's board. It's a little bit short, so for okasinnsuke to get the full clear, he has to trade the bat into the BGBM.
And I think I'd be okay with that. It leaves you with a bit of board presence as well, which is still more impactful than face damage. Like, obviously, if you could get them down to 15, you'd love to, because it gives you a potential out in the next couple turns. But I don't think Jace alone would get there, because it's like 10 extra damage with the double Fury, double Chaos Strike, which is still just a smidge off.
Crazy that Chonsu's just straight up rewarded for ignoring the bat, choosing to send all the damage face, giving himself a breakpoint for Wicked Stab, even if his entire board gets cleared. And we'll see what the Swindle pulls. No gizmos!
Oh my god, how?
He's got a tradable still to look for it with the Cutlass, but there's also the question of, do you just equip the Cutlass and swing face? Because that's also a 2-turn lethal setup, even if your 11/11 manages to be cleared.
Yeah, you
trades it.
Trade. Oh my goodness, it's so close.
okasinnsuke still in it somehow with the potential for a Magtheridon board clear if he gets a Fell Scream Blast, a ton of healing as well. He cannot guarantee... Wait. Oh, he can. So you play Magtheridon, right? And then you trade the 1/1s into an Acolyte apiece.
Yeah.
And the Fell Scream. Well, you use your hero power somewhere in between there to get rid of the other 1/3. And then the Fell Barrage should be able to clear the remaining 1/2s.
Oh my god.
It's a clear! He's hanging in there! Is there a way he can do this without tanking damage? I don't know. Because the 2/3 stealth can mess with it if you don't take trades first, right?
Yeah, this isn't guaranteed anymore, is it?
No, it's not. But he gets good outcome. Okay. Not a fan of this play.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, he gets face damage as a result, but that hardly feels worth it.
Yeah, I don't think it's worth it either. And he also just has to use an Arcanist where he didn't... I mean, he used an Arcanist where he didn't have to, right? Oh! Stab off the top, closes it in the blink of an eye.
Man, a weird way for that one to end. And I think well played by okasinnsuke, apart from that end turn that I do agree with you was a little bit... you know, more expensive than it needed to be. Chonsu at the end, I still have questions about his choice of going for trade versus not trade on the weapon, because it was like potentially 2-turn lethal, or at the very least force them to find a heal, or just give yourself a slightly higher chance of finding Wicked Stab, which still isn't necessarily lethal unless you hit it exactly on that turn, because they could still heal. A very, very tough choice, and one of those ones that it's so difficult to work the odds out of on the fly, but almost led to Chonsu losing there if he didn't top deck the Wicked Stab at the end. There was real potential for okasinnsuke to clutch it.
It's very true. I don't mind the way Chonsu piloted that last bit of the game where he was just looking for a bit more damage for lethal, but I still can't believe he didn't trade away the 7-2 bat. It wouldn't lose him any immediate damage phase if he had just used the Vanessa Wind Fury. But in the early game, I think very cleverly approached. How often do you see a player so willing to go for SI7 Smuggler for a Wisp, just leveraging Shadow Step effects to build up the SI7 effects one way or another? Even if it's not the ideal way to start the train, it gets your quest completion done nice and quickly, and that's the most important part.
Absolutely. And it's going to be probably the most important part in this next game as well, but it's probably not going to matter, unfortunately, as okasinnsuke is going to be lining up his Control Warrior. As I've said, what feels like the secret sauce to his success so far. It has such a dominant matchup against the Rogue. Every single card is able to kill off every single kind of board that Rogue is developing. In the early game, you've got yourself Minefield, you've got the weapons, Sword and Board, Shield Slam. Mid-game, Cutting Class, Brawl, Rancor, Rakara, and then later on, if you even need it, Onyxia can just lock down the board and pretty much secure the win for the Warrior. I'd be very surprised if Chonsu can upset this one.
Agreed. Especially since the win condition for Chonsu of completing quest involves playing minions that are very weak to Outrider's Axe. Okasinnsuke can just get to his many different removal pieces and find the most convenient way to deal with each board at any given point if he has enough resources. So Chonsu, if possible, would like to complete quests with stealth minions, specifically only Skulker, because the operative is not going to be able to gain stealth, no minion targets to rush into. But outside of that, the Outrider's Axe is almost always going to find a target. And Okasinnsuke, is this another Corsair Cash Toss? Or was it not in the opening hand?
I think I remember the other two weapons. I couldn't recall if there was the Corsair Cash. I was looking at Chonsu's hand, but if it was, it's a definite pattern we're seeing with Okasinnsuke, where he just hates Corsair Cash for some reason.
I mean, I definitely agree with keeping the Axe one way or another, even if you like have tutor effects that you can possibly get and have the deck even thinner if you get them in the right order. I prefer having the guarantee of just being able to coin out the Axe nice and early and make sure that he has enough resources. But Chonsu actually does get the double stealth opener, which makes activating Axe a little bit more difficult here.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous start for Chonsu. I like his decision as well to go for double 2-drop instead, or the double Skulker, just because you can then lead up with a bigger Smuggler. The Tenwu works out fine and he's getting very rapid quest progression. Does decide to attack here though, which, although it does open you up to a swing from the Axe, I think is still fine. I'd rather get in 2 damage before I'm Minefielded or Coin Rancored.
That's true. There's just too many other clears available. Can't play around every single thing that the Warrior has. And Okasinnsuke, as early as now, is thinking about whether he's able to tank the 2 damage. I think it's definitely still justifiable. He has a Buckler in hand, but he disagrees, just goes for the Minefield. Holding on to Coin also has its merits in the matchup. An earlier raid boss, Onyxia, can completely seal it in the favor of Warrior, as we've seen already earlier this week. And the Smuggler spawning Tenwu is just like a pretty funny order of seeing things. Usually it's the other way around.
Debs the Tenwu, we've seen it, Gia. APAC first, 20 Wu. We've got it. Does this make any difference than just shadow stepping the Smuggler?
It's cooler.
It's cooler. So true.
And Cabal something, I don't know the name of it, but Death Rattle, it gives a minion +1/+1, right?
I think so, yeah.
And does that make anything awkward for Okasinnsuke? He doesn't quite have access to a full clear unless he wants to pull the trigger on Buckler Shield Shatter, which feels like an overcommittal.
I think I'm pretty happy with just swinging into the 1-3, to be honest here.
I agree. We can talk about once again, what he's saving the coin for, because we did mention Onyxia later on, but in the context of his current hand, there's nothing that he particularly needs coin for in the near future. So I wonder if he'd be willing to also coin out a Sword and Board, for example, to take even less damage and isolate the 3/3.
Okay, Sword and Board plus the weapon. Okay. Well, it looked with the way he was ordering it like it was going to end up on a brawl, which I would be absolutely staggered to see. But yes, this makes a good amount of sense, clearing off a good amount of the board. And also drawing cards while not taking too much damage. I didn't necessarily expect him to kill the 3/3 instead, even though it does immediately save him damage. But I guess having already seen a Shadow Step and technically a Tenwu as well, he's less afraid of it being bounced again.
Technically a Tenwu. Yeah, it's fair enough. okasinnsuke maybe just was also planning that in the next turn he wouldn't necessarily clear the whole board again, because in the span of just one turn, if you are just going to remove the 3/3 the next turn with a removal spell, then you don't actually take less damage by swinging into it. But if you are planning to leave it up for more than one turn, then yes, it makes sense to get rid of it as soon as possible. Okay, Onyxian Drake picked up with heavy plate. That could be a pretty potent turn 7 play, but you could also use Buckler with it next turn. Chansu has done a pretty good job so far of building a board that just feels a little bit shy of an auto brawl, but also scary to just swing and leave up the rest of it.
The two plays I'm considering on this turn are Heavy Plate Shields, Hero Power Shield Shatter. I think it's... I don't think it's ridiculous at all to go for it here. Like, there is 8 power on the board. That's pretty scary. But by going for the swing first here, I guess you realize you just don't really need to do that yet. It could even be something as simple as Corsair Cash Hero Power Shield Slam, just to take out the 3/2 as well.
Shield Slam feels awfully valuable when we're getting in the territory of SA7 Smuggler being quite large, Scabs itself, if it's somehow unstealthed, and okasinnsuke does have ways to gain armor very quickly, so I would be hesitant to use the Shield Slam here, but it looks like he is just leveraging the Buckler, while there's not enough minion pressure on board to truly threaten him. But there is enough that Chansu actually, if he wants to send everything face, is giving okasinnsuke the full value of the 10 armor. I think it's a clever spot.
So double operative is where my head is at first of all. It's kind of weak to Blade Storm would be the problem, obviously, with a swing and then everything being at 4 health left on board, in which case we could instead consider just the Secret Passage, or even a Tenwu play, where you go operative and then bounce the Smuggler with Tenwu.
I do like going for the 30 Wu at this point. Even though you lose the buff on the Smuggler, it just builds a more awkward board shape for okasinnsuke to have to deal with, and you get use out of the Tenwu, which, you know, if that board is cleared, doesn't necessarily have a good target in the near future. Still weak to Blade Storm-ish.
Yeah. And more importantly, everything here dies to a nice clean Shield Shatter. And at this point, I'm thinking it looks pretty juicy indeed, just to clear off this board the turn before Scabs comes online.
Yeah, only question is as to whether he wants to draw another card, swinging into the 1/3 first, and okasinnsuke says yes, he does. Like last turn, Heavy Plate Hero Power Shield Shatter is available, and so with that last mana, he could also just trade away the Provoke. Don't think it's gonna be particularly useful in the near future. Like, that is a way to deal with the stealth Scabs potentially, but he doesn't have a minion of which it has high enough attack to kill off a 7/7 or 9/7 rather.
I would be absolutely fine with trading that, as you say, and then just Heavy Plate Hero Power Shield Slam is a nice way to round out the turn. I guess after you see what comes off the draw. I think that's Kazaka-san. Okay. Now the Provoke becomes a little bit higher value to hold on to, even if it's just for turn 8.
It's true. If Chonsu goes for a play where he stealth scabs this turn and somehow doesn't attack again, if he's getting a bit greedier with the setups, it's not out of the realm of possibility that Kazaka-san Provoke could provide a clear. All to protect against Blade Storm, the standard. All right, this is a big push from Chonsu. He has access to Battlegrounds Battlemaster for effectively 11 burst here. But Okashinsuke has his pick of how to delay this. It could just be a Bulwark.
Yeah.
He could play a Nixian Warder, honestly, just for the taunt value as well. Spend his mana.
You'd never consider Brawl here, would you? Just to take the 50-50?
No, I don't
guess
think so.
Yeah, with no other board AoE in hand, it's a bit crazy.
Yeah, he's perfectly safe behind the Bulwark here. Chonsu doesn't really have access to small bits and pieces of damage outside of the Mole going face twice and either Dagger or Gyro Blade just to shave off the Bulwark. But the Bulwark on 4 charges will still be able to soak at least 9 damage from the scabs. Cowardly Grunts. What's that? Oh, a Gorehowl! Oh my!
That's more like it. Yeah, I think Grunt is basically completely useless. You don't want to pull out your, I don't know, operatives or informants.
It's funny that we see that card after. It's been so long since Big Warrior has been available. Probably don't want to give them a Blade Storm. Don't really want to give them a Drake either. Is it ever Rakara? Because that takes up the vast majority of their turn. And if it's just that, then your board isn't being cleared.
Okay, he ends up on the Drake. I was kind of considering this just because, you know, if they go double Drake on this turn, it's okay. Because even though they kill off, say, for example, the 2 left minions on your board, as they probably would, you just have Sap plus Assassin, and you're still pushing a lot of damage. You're still setting up for that Gorehowl surprise lethal.
True. Okashinsuke here, no matter what the result from Brawl, he can clear the last minion with Armor Up Shield Slam. Very clean. And it is the Scabs that wins. And now Chonsu has to refill. Really needs informants. Okay,
Ooh,
that's the best one.
Yeah, this was rapidly entering the unfun portion of the game for Chonsu, where you just put down a couple of rubbish minions every turn and hope that they somehow miraculously are good enough. But he's got 1, maybe 2 turns more of decent plays before things start really turning dour. And so just loading up here as much as he can, absolutely. Assassin, Informant, he knows that Brawl is not coming off the top and that it's in deck, given that the other one has already been played. So I think he has liberty to go fairly wide here.
Right. Choosing between Operative and Informant, I almost thought this is an auto-Informant turn just because it's the most amount of pressure after he's seen the big removal. So this is the best window he's ever going to have to stick a relevant board. I like that he's going in with the 11-11 here. Cutting Class, which Chonsu gave to Okashinsuke, is too expensive, honestly. And Kazaka-san Provoke can actually still clear the 3 minions on the right.
I'm actually considering it here. Like, you have, even if you don't play the Axe, like, you have just straight up Cutting Class next turn for 5 mana, which could find you Wand or Vampiric Fangs, Poison. You could obviously still just top deck Annoyer Horn, Embers, Book. Like, you know, it's very risky, but it could just instantly win you the game.
You do that, you know for a fact your Kazaka-san is getting sapped back for the immediate turn. And if you miss...
Dead.
Oh yeah, sorry, it's getting provoked. Yeah, okay, my bad. He actually trades it now. Rancor gains him armor and just 1 short of being able to Drake away. Oh, he can at least kill the assassin.
And now the question has to be begged. Is he going to... Well, I suppose the question is answered. He's not really going to have time to play Kazakhstan. Definitely not next turn. Probably not the turn after as well. And does he have enough removal to get through all these threats and then play Kazakhstan afterwards? Or was that his window that passed him by?
Might be. He still has a couple of draws from the natural deck that can help deal with this. The Bladestorm is in there. I think one more heavy plate as well to activate the Onyxian Drake that wasn't sapped back. Vanessa gets him a Drake. Not particularly good, but Informant number 2 is amazing. And because this first one is damaged and also just playing one means the other one is buffed more, they won't be the same health total for Bladestorm.
Yeah, they're just very, very tough to kill indeed. Brawl's not so good. Bladestorm, Onyxian Drakes, the armor's too low. Everything's just a little bit awkward unless it's exactly his own raid boss Onyxia in order to clear all this off, especially now that the other informant wasn't played by Chonsu. A top deck of Onyxia could put okasinnsuke finally back in the lead.
And so much patience from Chonsu. Doesn't want to load up into another brawl, I suppose. And still sets up a lethal just with Gorehowl, even if this entire board gets cleared. That Shield Shatter is so expensive. No armor available to okasinnsuke. He reaches for the Outrider's Axe because it's essentially free if you're playing Cutting Class.
And this is going disastrously. What can he even top deck here that would keep him in the game?
Heavy plate? Yeah, he'd have just enough mana to play the Shield Shatter after it, but it still doesn't clear the 11-9.
Barov obviously not in the deck.
I don't know if there's an out, Derek.
I kind of can't believe it even got to this point, but I agree. I think this game for okasinnsuke seems to have just slipped away. There was too many threats turn after turn, and okasinnsuke never found the time to swing the board back into his favor and get his own win condition online. And with whiff, heavy play into Shield Slam is 1 damage off clearing. Oh my god, no way!
Crazy, the 11-9 just gets there. Chonsu doesn't even need his Gorehowl. And he doesn't get to show it either. That is a disaster for okasinnsuke because that's supposed to be the favorable. And we all know how it works in LHS. Once you lose with your counter Q deck, you're in a disastrous position.
The unthinkable has happened. okasinnsuke actually lost the game with his Control Warrior, which had yet to happen on stream this weekend. And all of a sudden, like you said, it's absolute disaster territory. He now has to 3-0 with his weapon rogue, with his quest rogue here against Chonsu's own quest rogue, which has been looking very, very strong so far. However, I will say that because Chonsu decided to go for Paladin in his lineup, that made sense on paper. You know, it's good against the Demon Hunter. It's decent against Druid if you don't want to ban that at any point. Good against Control Warriors as well. However, the Paladin is very weak to the Quest Rogue, as we haven't seen this weekend, but should be the case. And now with Chonsu having Rogue, a 50-50 against Quest Rogue, obviously, Paladin a slight unfavorable, and Demon Hunter a slight unfavorable, Chonsu's undeniably still in the lead, but okasinnsuke does still have an avenue to victory. There's no hard wall staring him down that's going to keep him from taking it.
Yeah, funnily enough, when you get in this position in LHS, that first matchup you have to beat is your most difficult one. And that remains true here, but it ends up being a 50-50. So okasinnsuke here, even though he is very much far behind, still is in with a shot a bit more than other LHS disaster positions, to be fair. In terms of the differences of the list, I think they are largely similar. We do know that Chonsu really favors this Vanessa Van Cleef, which has, you know, served him pretty well so far, just, if anything, to make Foxy Fraud a bit more consistent. And okasinnsuke is still running the Foxy Fraud package, but not a Vanessa. Trying to figure out what he has instead. Give me a second. I can't find it.
What, compared to Chonsu? Chonsu must have a one-off, I guess, then, to make up for it. No, you're right. I'll keep looking.
Okay, we'll get back to that later, because for now, is this Chonsu again with the double smuggler and shadow step opener?
It
This
is
every time.
Yeah, it's his signature. And the answer is Scab's Cutter Butter, which is actually a pretty relevant difference, as I would say Scabs is a much more potent card in the matchup most of the time, because even though Vanessa can get you another SI card, which is very useful, just being able to get that much tempo at the start is often enough to win the game on its own.
It's true. Even though the game can go in a back and forth board battle if both players have access to a similar amount of SI cards and removal options from Agent, Operative, and Extortion being the big ones. If one player has only board development and no removal, it's very easy to just get zooed down on the other side before the quest reward even comes into play. But Chonsu here, no qualms, taking his less cute 0-drop this time, but he's able to just smuggle again into Vanessa, and Vanessa is going to get him another smuggler.
Not bad at all. I mean, it's not quite as cool as going coin Vanessa on 2 for an extra quest, and that's getting an extra stabs later on, but it's not bad. I'll accept it. And like you say, does put him pretty nicely ahead in terms of the quest progression. And also just in terms of the cards he has in hand, this assassin is just begging for more SI cards. And that is exactly what Chonsu has plenty of, being able to go SI, 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 hopefully picking up an extortion or a skulker to smooth out the curve a little bit. Means that the assassin could be fantastically powerful for him to swing the board, as it could also now be for okasinnsuke with double assassin in his hand, and also plenty of SI cards to go with them.
And it's so back and forth, and both of them get Fizz Flash for their first Gizmo, which is the highest tempo one as well. And he gets a rushing minion, the replacement to Bluegill Warrior that I never learned the name of. I'm so sorry. That's huge here. Just removing any additional minion is big, because honestly, quantity is more of an important factor in the early game board battle, having more minions with which to dictate the trades. Chonsu's falling quite far behind because of that, but his SI7 smuggler is going to get a 3-drop now, right? Or a 2. So bad at keeping track of this.
I cost 4, so yeah, it would be a 3-drop there, and now a 4-drop were he to play it. But he's obviously going for the stealth first. And this stealth annoyingly does mean that the assassin is not activatable on this turn. Which is, you know, annoying, but still okay. Okasinnsuke can hold them back, probably go for Informant this turn, Passage next turn, and then a double Assassin the turn after to really get that board locked down in his favor.
Yeah, the double Assassin can be such a huge swing indeed. But the question is it ever just Passage this turn? The potential to play 2 minions rather than 1 is always tempting, but the Informant does allow Okasinnsuke to go for Gizmo instead, and there's honestly very many good outcomes here. That's probably the worst one. At least playable compared to Fizz Flash Distractor.
Yeah, just stealthing this minion so it can't be sapped back or killed by an assassin. You could honestly just leave that stealthed until it gets a good trading target as well.
True. All right, what's in the box for Chonsu this time? The rest of the turn is super awkward, just 1 SI card short of being able to play Assassin. So he needs a good Gizmo here.
Oh! Quick game of Bounce the Imp.
Does it end up just being Dagger here to get rid of the 1-3 plus the trade?
Ugh.
Feels awful, but I feel like these Fizz Flashes have too much value later on.
Yeah. Agreed.
He does have a pretty powerful next turn of Smuggler, Assassin, Fizz Flash. Oh, it's face, says Chonsu here. All right. He does get an additional 3 damage face from the Death Rattle on this Priest card. Now, second Informant into Assassin available for Okasinnsuke.
Right. And then I I kind of want to say you still just leave the stealth there. Like, there's no way for Chonsu to interact with it at all without Shadowcrafter Scabs in his deck. So you can just, at any point, get yourself 8 or even 16 damage with it once you find the BGBM.
True. But if you do that, is there much utility in playing the other one at all if you expected to get assassinated or sapped? Because he could go for a Fizz Flash plus Secret Passage play and play cheap SI cards and lead up into a turn 7 where he can go Scabs and Assassin at the same time. Likely for free at that point. But he is choosing to fully load up the board. And if you are playing 2 big minions, I feel like it makes sense to just unstealth one, try and cash the damage in while it's difficult to deal with both for Chonsu in theory.
I guess, yeah, I guess. I just feel like you can get a pretty good read on at least one Fizz Flash because your opponent went Dagger pass at the end of the last turn. Like, I think every other gizmo they would have just played there instead of daggering, given that they could have attacked into the 1/1 and re-stealthed with their operative instead. And then, you know, if they have a Fizz Flash, there's a good chance they have an Assassin as well to deal with the other one. But either way, okasinnsuke does attack. He gets the damage in and is, of course, way ahead in the damage race now. It's just about whether or not he can utilize that advantage in terms of health, the fact that Chonsu is now quite low, to actually close out the game. Because in terms of the board battle, he is now decisively behind.
I'm just endlessly amused by the Smuggler summoning yet another SI card here. Chonsu, I think, has all the right in the world to go face here. Again, it's the quantity of minions that matters so much in this matchup because okasinnsuke doesn't really have access to lethal here, even if he had Battlegrounds, Battlemaster, not enough mana to play Wicked Stab, and even if he did, I think it'd be 2 damage short. So Chonsu's just saying, you can't play Scabs if I am going to kill you on the next turn. But is that necessarily the case? Because okasinnsuke can go Scabs plus Assassin plus Fizz Flash plus double trades, and that removes so much damage from the board.
I think his best chance is to fit stealth in there on the Scabs. Like, you go Scabs, trade the Assassin into the Assassin, Assassin with the combo on the 5/4, and then you just give yourself a chance of Passage plus BGBM to end the game next turn. And I think that's your best chance rather than dragging it out any longer.
I agree. So if he removes 9 damage from the board, he leaves up 5, 6, 7, and Battlegrounds Battlemaster can add 5 at most, so he's not dead to that either. Yeah, I don't think there's any counter-lethal opportunities for Chonsu here, so nicely spotted by okasinnsuke. Question is, how can Chonsu try and survive this? Obviously, he can't do anything about Battlegrounds Battlemaster. He can't do anything about Wicked Stab plus Hidden Gyroblade either, because he doesn't even have a way to replay the Smuggler to try and find a taunt. So in the world where you can do literally nothing to disrupt them other than Spyomatic to make their top deck a little bit worse, probably just Scabs plus Spyomatic and the stealth on your own Scabs.
Yeah, I agree. I always run back to, can you bounce your own minions back with Fizz Flash? And then realizing even if you could, which you can't, you wouldn't be able to play them anyway. So then never an out available there. But like you said, with Spyomatic disrupting the draw, guaranteeing no BGBM off the top, it's all in on okasinnsuke now to find it off of the Secret Passage. And I think you just want maximum mana available to get it.
Well, I would like to see him play the Gyroblade first, because that gives him a single Wicked Stab out also.
Okay.
The passage.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, and with that 2 mana spent, he could still play a BGBM theoretically. He is looking at Assassin if he misses, but Assassin's not even close to enough to dealing with this board.
Yeah. And
because he can't deal with the stealth Scabs on the other side, I think the counter lethal is his best shot, but he forgoes the Gyroblade actually. Okay.
Yeah, that definitely felt worse. Like, it gives him mana for an extra tradable, but that's really not what he's looking for here, as now he's going for, wow, Swindle instead of trading the Extortion? What is he looking for here?
Double stab?
Oh.
Oh man, there's so little time left.
Oh,
There's
stab
one stab.
and Battle Master, no!
He didn't play the gyro blade, Derek. He didn't
Oh.
play the gyro blade. Is it really just gonna end like this? No outs. He
I
trades.
think it is. Oh, he gets the second one as well. And I've got to say, Gia, even though I was proposing the exact same play that okasinnsuke made at the start, I think you had the right idea there. That was just a missing of a huge percentage from okasinnsuke in a match that could very much have gone his way. It was just favored, I think, at that point with, you know, he could have hit the secret passage, he could have hit the second passage off the first passage, swindle to find wicked stab. Obviously, just hitting the BGBM at any point also gets there as well. Just a kind of unfortunate way for it to end.
Right. The one breakpoint I think that supports just going passage without gyroblade is if you have to passage into passage again to find BGBM.
Right.
But I feel like that removes too many of your other outs, that one extra mana spent, because he had to realize that the BGBM wasn't the only out. It was like Wicked Stab or both Wicked Stabs plus Gyroblade as a breakpoint. And with that one extra mana spent, I think he leaves himself way more flexibility. Bit of an unfortunate way to go out, but in the end, Chonsu just completely unstoppable on the quest rogue, on anything. He's just been doing well on ladder. He was the champion of last week, and he's in the finals of this week.
Why did I ever doubt him, Gia? My prediction going to okasinnsuke, embarrassing. I immediately rescind it and change my vote to Chonsu half an hour before the broadcast catches up, and there's no way that anyone can prove otherwise. But for that win, huge congratulations to Chonsu. Solidifies him at 9 points, which, I mean, just has to lock him in into first place. Even though Posesi could, like, get up to, what, 8 points? Yeah, I don't think anyone else can even catch him up now. So Chonsu just guaranteed to finish right at the top of the leaderboard after a first place and at least a second place this week as well. He is going to be in last call, and he is also going to be in those top 2 seeds for the playoffs, which I'm ecstatic about. We're big Chonsu fans here, and like you say, he has been playing out of this world in the last couple of weeks, and getting those deserved wins. So it's going to be all now to find out who he's going to be playing against, be it Posesi or be it Alutemu in the grand finals. When we come back from this break, it will be that exact match for the last spot in the finals. Welcome back to Hearthstone Grandmasters. As the sounds of Gia hurriedly picking her predictions fades away, we are ready to jump into the second game of the day. Posesi versus Alutemu. And Gia, speaking of said predictions, what do you got for us in this series in a matchup of two of the greatest, the all-time GOATs of Asia Pacific?
Well, I did pick Alutemu for my APAC prediction, which would imply that I think he's going to win this first semifinal before he wins the grand final. And before anybody knocks me for that, I did mention Alutemu to you even before the last series started. Okay, I'm not trying to choose somebody that already got a win on the board. I just couldn't have the time to check out the other regions as well. So please forgive me for that. And the reason I do think Alutemu's in the lead is I just feel like his Burn Shaman play has been unstoppable. He 3-0'd with it yesterday. I feel like the deck is a very solid pick for LHS, not for the reasons you would expect of it having polarized matchups, but rather it has a pretty even matchup spread where you can rely on it even if it's not a solid counter queue to still get a win somewhere. And it doesn't have any terrible matchups either. Especially when you're running the Viper, the queue of Warrior into that doesn't feel unwinnable for Shaman.
Yeah, I'm a pretty big fan of the Burn Shaman right now, and I'm also, to be honest, not a big fan of the Miracle Priest, as I've talked about a couple times. Like, of the few players who brought Priest this week, Rally Priest for Shaxi went 1-3. Miracle Priest for Gur went 2-6. Miracle Priest for Posesi is 0-2. Like, it's negative for everybody in APAC across the field so far. And I think there's good reason for that. It feels like it's decent against the Demon Hunter, sure, because they struggle to deal with such big boards, but it doesn't feel fantastic into the Demon Hunter at the same time, because you have to play quite a weird game plan to play around Glide. And then it's weak to the Shamans, it's weak to the Rogues, doesn't feel fantastic into Demon Hunter, honestly. Feels weak to the Warriors as well. Like, all the most popular decks feel like they actually do pretty well against the Miracle Priest. So I do think, in my opinion, Posesi might have slightly missed the mark in this last Euro standing format with the Miracle Priest, which is why I would also favor Alutemu in this series.
Yeah, I think when Miracle Priest was at its peak popularity at the Masters Tour, I believe, the general line of thinking is that it's actually good against Shaman back in the day. I don't know what changed, because my opinion has also kind of shifted to Shaman being in the lead in that matchup. Maybe the lack of Zyrella gives Priest a bit of a harder time to deal with the beatdown game plan from Shaman, but we shall see. Posesi is just going to start with the Demon Hunter first, and because this is LHS, 1 weak link in your lineup doesn't necessarily mean that you're in a terrible position, because you don't have to win with that weakest deck necessarily. Posesi could just take a sweep on the Demon Hunter, but it is going to start off with a mirror, because Alutemu has also queued up Demon Hunter. Neither player is opting for the Kazakhstan top end, which has become popular in other lists and more so in other regions, I would say. They do just have the exact same 30 cards, and every time we've seen this mirror so far, it's more been about who gets the Magtheridon down early. I'm hoping we can have a different pan out, because without early Magtheridon, I actually feel the matchup is very, very intricate. And while it does also have a lot of shenanigans involved with gliding back and forth and gliding back your quest reward, the late game of actually how to play around Expendable Performers combo is very intricate indeed.
Yeah, that sounds lame. I want big demons punching each other in the face. I want casters to mess up the order of waking up on Magtheridons every single time. Me specifically, despite having tried to remember it before. That's what APAC is all about. That's what this region of Grandmasters was built upon. And I'll be damned if it's going to change now. As yesterday for Alan, it was just a perfect sequencing, right? He had that exact dichotomy where he could choose to prioritize a very good glide, getting rid of like 8 cards in his opponent's hand, or wake up the Magtheridon. And by picking the Magtheridon, I think it beautifully demonstrated exactly what this matchup is all about. Secondarily, after Magtheridon, I do think that, kind of similarly to versus the Warrior, although it's a little bit different, getting an early Kurtrus is very important to just start juicing up that hero power, getting damage face, and making it so at all points in the game, you don't even necessarily need performers, you just need Jace to start getting them down to really, really scary health totals.
Yeah, the Jace can be a huge one indeed, especially when it's so difficult to keep track of specific breakpoints, depending on whether there's minions on board. The order of whether your Fel Barrage goes first or after the Immolation Aura can be dependent on a lethal. And also, if you're going to play Talented Arcanist before Jace, because that actually does work with the first spell that Jace recasts. But perhaps we're getting a bit too far ahead of ourselves, because in the early game, it is very much about card draw and dumping the cards that you don't want to be drawing back post glide, like Immolation Aura. Okay, no Magtheridon in sight. Is it lame, Derek? Are you uninterested in the matchup?
I'll play along. I'll pretend, as it's my job, to be interested without any big demons punching anyone. But for Posesi, it's a weird old start to the game where obviously double jump is guaranteed to hit either the Spectral Sight or the Glide. And so saving it until turn 2 is something you could consider if you're trying to hit exactly the Spectral Sight to get an earlier quest completion. But I think unless anything drastically changes from, for example, that Illidari studies, you're probably saving the double jump until turn 4 in order to try and get yourself double jump, to try and get yourself glide, whilst also dumping some of the other cards in your hand so as to not leave yourself too vulnerable to a glide from the other side.
Ah, yes, the Alutemu Classic Glide has appeared, and it's not too difficult to outcast, honestly. But because he hasn't played Quest on turn 1, he can't actually get the turn, or like the quickest possible glide, because if he had played Quest turn 1, he could potentially go Studies and then trade Need for Greed on turn 2, and then Eldrazi Warblades on turn 3, and then glide the turn after.
He still can.
He still can, right, because of the discount, but you save the Need for Greed tradable
yes, exactly.
for the turn of the glide. Okay, still works out here. And that whole sort of discussion around Quest on 1, we saw Posesi rope out that entire first turn, and I feel weird saying this, but I love the hesitation. Like, I really don't think there should be any hard rules, even though there's the rule of thumb of being on coin. It makes sense a lot of the time to Quest on 1 because you want to leave yourself open to top decks of Spectral Sight and Need for Greed and Quest progression there. There's still some contacts of hand where you can't quite do it. Alutemu, though, letting rip with the glide, even though it's only on his own hand to get quest progression as quick as possible. He's not concerned with trying to outcast Posesi's glide, because if he waited one turn longer, there is the potential that Alutemu also just got glided before he could play his own.
Which all of a sudden opens up really interesting possibilities for Posesi, obviously mainly surrounding the idea of glide, which I think he was looking for on this first option. He gets himself offered Star Student Stelina, which I think is not an absurd card to coin out here just because your opponent has a small hand. If you could get Need for Greed, Glide, Spectral Sight, Double Jump, there's a lot of very, very key cards that could disrupt them heavily.
Yeah, I was honestly looking at him just going for it there, but after he had gone for Studies, I thought he would go, okay, pick the Spectral Sight, you can play it and then complete quest, ideally with a tradable you draw from the Spectral Sight coined out, or at worst double jump. But in the end, he just holds onto it, stacking up these draw effects. It's not the toughest thing for him to outcast the Spectral Sight, but it does involve using a lot of the resources from the left-hand side. Meanwhile, for Alutemu, picks up a Spectral of his own and a clutch tradable at the end. Second quest progressed while Posesi is still on stage 1.
Man, he went from 0 card draw in hand to quest completion just based off a top deck. That is so lucky at this point in the game. Posesi, though, getting himself coin 2-mana glide afterwards. This, like, is unlikely, but it's possible. This is like double quest completion on the same turn.
Yeah, very much so. He just gets Need for Greed, and I guess it's still a little bit short. But it's a completely dry of card draw hand. That's terrible for Posesi because he coined the glide without having preloaded mana on Fury, I think, with the hope of going for double quest progression. But instead, he floats a ton of mana this turn, and his deck is not particularly well stacked with card draw. There's a Stelina in there as well. But Alutemu has just gotten back a Spectral of his own. And Chaos Strike. He's very likely to just get Kurtrus in hand next turn.
And you just never bet against Alutemu, especially on the Demon Hunter. He's the absolute king of glides. The Alutemu Kaku can never. Is that what it was?
Oh, sorry. You're right. It's Kaku, but I thought you said Kakukan as one word, but Kakukan is what you were saying, right?
Yes. I hope I didn't accidentally say something terrible in Japanese by
Oh, no, you didn't. But it just sounded funny. All right. Okay, it's not guaranteed Kurtrus. He still needs a tradable. So let's see. There's also the concern of even if you do get Kurtrus in hand, what if it gets glided back and you're down both spectral sites? But it simply doesn't matter for Alutemu.
Oh my god. I
think I prefer Chaos Strike and trade the Need for Greed rather than playing it out. Because if you play the Need for Greed here, the worst case scenario is they have Kurtrus, glide to put back your Kurtrus, right? And so you shuffle a bigger hand. Posesi, not happy to see that. You shuffle back a bigger hand and you've used the Need for Greed, which is your best card draw effect that still remains in the deck. Alutemu's down both spectral sites now, so his contingency for glide has to be putting back the Need for Greed, in my opinion. But he doesn't even have to worry about it because Posesi's turn is just hero power pass. This is a complete disaster.
Yeah, just absolute straight garbanzo here from Posesi as Alutemu is just flying towards a win condition here. He's got Kurtrus down. He's got some good damage spells to juice up a potential Jace later on in the game. Magtheridon, not bad either, with a way to wake it up, is very powerful next turn, or 2 turns time, sorry, before he can actually wake it up. Only thing he's missing is some card draw now. That's the only weakness of his hand. But, you know, as we say, a single Need for Greed will solve that forever.
He's just not to expend a Fury, because I think he has a pretty hard read on no glide right now. And so that Fury being saved up for a Warblades could be a bit more important later on. Posesi has access to not even being able to trade down the Kurtrus with one bat. It has to be both of them in. Feels terrible. He's not even going to bother trading. Okay, fair enough. To be fair, Posesi wants that damage on board because he actually does just have the Performers combo somehow next turn.
True, actually, yeah.
But I don't think Alutemu is going to leave very much health on board, is he?
Well, he might Magtheridon now that he's picked up the Fellscream Blast. And if he does, that's 12 health on board, which
it's actually just dead.
Just dead?
Yeah.
Oh, no, wait, but he would heal. He'd heal up to 30. So, no, sorry, he would.
True. Dead. Yeah. Okay. But does he need to Magtheridon is the question. It does set up lethal if Posesi's not able to clear or get the counter lethal. But you blow up your own Kurtrus, which doesn't feel great. However, the alternative to clearing the 5/4s is not super clean either. It would just be like Arcanist Fellscream Immolation Aura. Which is not terrible.
Bad. Yeah.
Okay, in the end, it is going to be the Magtheridon though. Oh my gosh. Is Posesi actually just going to pull this back? Because even though he doesn't have lethal, he's going to have the clear board, and Alutemu is down the Fellscream at that point.
Such a weird game. And yeah, like you say, I think you absolutely go for it here, even if it's not going to end up being lethal.
Yeah, it's just 24 damage straight up. Oh no!
Oh my god.
All right. Fair play. I mean, I'm sure Alutemu had some inkling of this possibility if Posesi's last couple turns were Hero Power Float 5 and Hero Power Float 4.
Yeah.
Surely he has the combo pieces in hand, or at least one of them.
Yeah, I think this actually ends up being 26 even, not even 24, because you get the one before you start attacking.
Oh, true. Right.
So literally just 4 damage needed to kill off Alutemu now, which means that with Need for Greed and Glide in hand for Posesi, there are a lot of ways that he could close out the game next turn. With the hero power, just an Aldraki Warblades would do it. Obviously, Fel Barrage would be able to do it as well. Chaos Strike, Fury, so many outs that he can hit, as this game has just flipped around in a way I've never seen it before.
But Alutemu still has the Aldraki Warblades and Double Fury in hand, and the Kurtrus Aura is active, so everything's cheap, but he really needs Need for Greed off the top to make any semblance of that possible, because it has to be a clear and a heal here. Down to 4. And off the top is double jump, but that's...
Oh no! Stelina, not now!
I was going to say that's Glide for sure because he played the Spectral Sights, but no, it's Stelina! And so Alutemu has to go Performers to not die to just hero power. Right? Because every other clear involved him having to tank the 2 damage, and he would just be dead to Posesi's hero power. Posesi... Any rush effect, any fury, any chaos strike, any Aldraki Warblades is just lethal.
Okay, that's a 3-mana Need for Greed off the top as well, I think, which is a great way to start the turn.
That's just it. That's the chaos strike. Posesi can't believe it either. Okay, Derek. I asked for a different pan out. We got a different pan out. Are you disappointed?
I am not disappointed. That was much more exciting. I see what I've been missing all along, and it's obviously just this gorgeous specimen here. Who else but Posesi could do that? What an absolute scam of a game. After Alutemu was scamming him the entire game, right? Getting glided his hand away, no card draw, into quest completion. It was just perfect, perfect, perfect. And then... playing Magtheridon, which as we've talked about is the #1 thing you want to do every time in this matchup, turned out to be what lost him the game.
Yeah, I mean, timing of Magtheridon is certainly something to talk about in the early game while there's no way to clear it, certainly. It's a big deal, but yeah, Alutemu, it really just didn't feel necessary to play that. I understand the thinking behind it because the way to clear the bats, if not with Magtheridon, left him with a very fragile Kurtrus, but I think he could have sort of had the read that he was so far in the lead that even if Posesi cleared the Kurtrus, like Alutemu was still just fine waiting for card draw. He wasn't under any pressure, and he could eventually put together his own lethal lot more quickly on average, but leaving that 12 health on board allowed for the 26 damage and Posesi to come from behind with the biggest punish we've seen all weekend.
Oh, just what I like to see. And now Alutemu moving on over to Le Quest Rogue. A perfectly good counter, as we've seen, as we kind of predicted as soon as we saw the lists come out, that this is the most consistent counter that you have to Demon Hunter that isn't completely off the rails. Like, you're not going all in on some kind of super specialized Paladin or whatever that can only beat Demon Hunter. Even Libram Paladin is a little bit further than I think most players would like to go in terms of trying to counter the Demon Hunter. Whereas Quest Rogue has obviously a really nice shot against the Demon Hunter, but can also beat the likes of the Druids, the Priests, even the Shamans. Not an out of the completely unwinnable matchup that it can get against that. And so for Alutemu, as we start to shake it down now, obviously this is a big win for Posesi. But I still do think that Alutemu is in a good shot if he gets this win, because then Posesi's best counter is the Rogue Mirror, or the Priest, if you want to call that a good matchup against Rogue, which I would not necessarily do. Yeah.
Yeah, it's still definitely winnable for Alutemu here overall in this series because Posesi has gone for the sort of non-conventional LHS lineup for the week with that Priest in there that doesn't seem to have a particularly good Q snipe. Maybe he just had a different read on the meta. But for now, the immediate problem for Alutemu is putting together the consistent SI curve, because we have talked about this different build of the stealth version sometimes feeling very clunky because because maybe you hit not the right combination of stealth package plus SI, like you hit a smuggler and a spy mistress and it doesn't seem to synergize well. But if you're Alutemu, you can hit the spy mistress with the Grey Heart Sage. Or two of them.
Wow. Yeah, okay. So pretty simple turn. I think I like Extortion Face. I'd rather just get maximum quest progression rather than trading through to more valuable cards, given that you're barely likely to get Greyheart Sage draw. Oh, it's kind of risky though.
Yeah, the punish is of course Fel Barrage. But if that's all that's happening, I feel like it's still okay for Alutemu. The problem is if you wait till turn 4 to go Mistress plus Greyheart Sage, you're walking into glide territory pretty heavily.
Yeah, I do think I like playing the Spy Mistress. I'm just not sure if I'm trading or playing the Extortion.
I do like playing it as well because you expect to get the card draw and the resources. But in the end, he holds onto it all together.
And luckily for Alutemu, it survives the turn. This is a monumental turning point in the game and in the series overall. If that had died, Alutemu's chances would be so much lower. Whereas now, even just this little extra bit of card draw that he can afford himself blows everything wide open. Extortion Face plus Smuggler next turn is fine. You can bounce it, play it again, then Passage, then SI. This game plan is looking fine for Alutemu. No kind of awkward turns coming up anytime soon.
I do like his decision to cash in the damage with the Spy Mistress as well, because he knows that Posesi's most disruptive play here is the coin glide. And if that happens, then he is not clearing the minions most likely, so might as well get the damage through while possible. And it's already enough pressure that Posesi says, no, I am not gliding here. And Alutemu, rewarded for holding onto his Extortion, gets a better target here, and with the SA7 agent off the top, can continue the quest progression while building up the Smuggler to a higher cost, mana cost of the minion it summons, which is always the better order to do it. Almost always.
Yeah, well, Coin Glide is always happening here, given Posesi's very lackluster hand, and given that your opponent has 5 cards instead of 4, I like outcasting it just because you have very little read on what their hand may or may not be, so just deleting 1 card from their hand seems fine. Slightly awkward positioning in terms of the cards in hand, where Spectral Sight honestly could have just been played at the end of the turn there in order to get the outcast while you can. But I guess if Demon Render Kurtrus is coming down next turn, which is a pretty reasonable play, then you can just outcast it from the left the turn after.
Yeah, I definitely like this from Posesi. Just getting early Kurtrus can be such a big deal for buying him the time also to complete the quest. It's not often that the Demon Hunter has time to play the quest reward Kurtrus because Rogue is pressuring them so consistently turn after turn. But maybe the Demon Hunter is enough of the swing. Posesi, however, reaching for the Warblades instead. Guess wants to get the swing on the Informant. Ooh, but the Need for Greed is tempting now too. I think he has to commit to the clear line. I don't think he can afford to tank all of this damage.
Oh, it's getting so scary. If he had 2 Arcanists and 2 Fell Screams left in his deck, I would be much more willing to tank the damage and heal up afterwards. But given that 1 of each has been used, I do agree. It's just a little bit too scary to leave all this in play.
The Alt Jockey plus the hero power would be a clear on the 5/5. He's still at 25 after that. He can still trade Need for Greed and he has the mana remaining. I guess he was just considering as to whether to trade it or hold it in hand. And I kind of like the trade because it's going to be quite some time before he'll have 5 mana available to play the not freshly drawn Need for Greed. Alutemu is going to see the Demon Hunter card he gets first. Warglaves? That's pretty good.
That's sick. Wow. I mean, it's expensive. It's also such a throwback. Man, I've completely forgotten that card even existed. But yeah, pretty good just to get, what, 12 damage face? Is it still a 3/4?
I think it's been nerfed. Hope we can get the the hover on it again, but it's just consistent damage, right? And Posesi, he does have a Viper, but that's a very expensive play to get rid of that. It might be a bit difficult for Alutemu to find the time to play the Warglaves because starting next turn, Gyroblade is just more efficient for the near future. But if it does get to a sort of stalemate point, as it sometimes does in the matchup where Demon Hunter has cleared all of the threats but they're out of healing, and Alutemu is just down to trying to top deck Wicked Stab, then the Warglaves could come in clutch.
Oh, off the top there is spicy. But I think it's probably still just Demon Rendered Kurtrus plus the hero power. You heal up a bit and you can clear off all but one minions on the board. And then setting up for a Magtheridon clear feels like a slightly better use of the Immo later on.
Right. Still a little bit short of the Magtheridon being able to clear the Scabs next turn. But with a certain top deck... Actually, no, there's no top deck he could get, right, for only 1 mana. That would let him deal with everything.
What do you mean? Sorry for
Sorry, if there's Scabs coming down next turn.
Oh, sorry.
Right? And then if Magtheridon plus Immolation Aura is in hand. Okay, if a bat survives, it's still fine.
Yeah, and I think Scabs is actually 2 SI cards away, not 1. So it's...
Oh, is it 2? Okay.
Yeah, incredibly unlikely that Scabs even comes down here. At which point, I think there's a good chance the Magtheridon will be active in 2 turns' time.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, it's down to 3-3, the Warglaves.
Yeah, I just Googled it. Honestly, looking at that card, did we ever actually play this? Was Demon Hunter that bad that we played a 5-mana 3/4 weapon? Like, I know it was good, but it doesn't look good now that I'm looking at it back, you know?
The meta was a much different landscape back then, and being able to tank a bunch of damage was relevant if you could get rid of the board. All right, need for greed. Even though it's not Scabs yet for Alutemu, it's still an 8/8 Informant, which is hugely threatening for Posesi. And every time you think about, can you just preload the Magtheridon versus Questrogue, you get punished by Shadow Step and Tenwu. So I don't quite think he should go for that. You can just keep progressing the card draw.
Yeah, complete the quest on this turn and just set up for the Magtheridon Arcanist next turn. Like, even if your opponent massively loads up on the board, you still have the availability to go Hero Power or Chaos Strike. Oh, I guess not Chaos Strike, sorry, but Fell Barrage now as well, to be able to kill off one of the smaller minions and then finish off with the Arcanist Magtheridon Immolation Aura as well. And as we can see, Alutemu is not going to be going wide on the board, most likely. It's just going to be Scabs with Stealth and maybe Weapon, just to start swinging face and get some damage in. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So with your last mana, which Gizmo is also played, perhaps a Spyomatic to make Posesi have slightly lower odds of being able to deal with it, although with that many resources in hand, it feels like Alutemu should smell a board clear one way or another, whether it comes in the form of Magtheridon or Arcanist. Immo plus Fell Barrage, I think, would still get the job done. But
not playing Scabs on this turn, like, you know, if you want to deal the damage with the weapon, you do want to get going sooner rather than later, but I don't think there's any time later that Scabs will stick where it won't stick now.
it's close because you could make the argument that whatever Posesi would use to potentially deal with Scabs and the 8/8, he might also have to use to just deal with the 8/8 and the 2/2 incidentally here. So maybe Alutemu is trying to bait out some removal before he tries and sticks the Scabs.
Ooh. Hey, Perino.
So if it is Magtheridon, Posesi knows that it's instantly getting Fizz flashed back to hand.
Right.
So
in which case you could consider not going for the Magtheridon and just going Arcanist Immolation plus Fel Barrage and then play the Snake as well. The question is really just whether that enables Jace to kill off the Scabs next turn.
Oh, this is huge. Kurtrus means it can be a clear with just Fel Barrage, right? And Arcanist, I suppose.
Right, but I guess he's going for the idea that this allows you to kill off
the Scabs
next turn, but it won't be Outcast.
Right, that's the problem. Which means it can only get one attack in without the immune. So instead, he's going for the Kurtrus this turn. Yeah,
Okay,
just with Immolation Aura. Yeah, this is cleaner than just going Kurtrus into Arcanist Fel Barrage. I feel like the Fel Barrage is so much more valuable to deal with the Scabs, especially since Arcanist Fel Barrage can deal with Scabs even without Magtheridon in the equation. So many Scabs! I think Alutemu was just being pushed out of this game slowly and methodically.
It does feel that way, doesn't it? Scabs plus Ol plus Stealth plus Sap on the Snake, I suppose. Or I guess double Sap on this turn. The main thing I'm trying to get to is that by playing this, the Mole, it at least makes it a little bit harder for your opponent to actually clear the Scabs itself, because the Fel Barrage will be chewed up by the Mole instead, or the 3/3 here in this instance.
Right, and Alutemu finds ways to maximize his board presence as well, fitting in the Scab's Cutter Butter, getting the discount on both the quest reward and one more treasure. So Sap again. Oh no, wait, he's saving one for Magtheridon, right? Probably double minion.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Deadeye.
Deadeye. Oh, he goes Sap instead. Okay. Well, so Magtheridon, I'm not seeing a guaranteed clear to activate it right now.
No, me neither. You could hero power attack into the 3/2, and then even then, it's still... Well, you then can't hero power to kill off the remaining one, can you? So that doesn't ever work. Magtheridon Spectral Sight, I think, is not ridiculous at all, but in the end, it's just Jace, and then I guess the Arcanist plus the Fel Barrage. Okay, that's smart.
This works. The Immolation Aura cleaning up the additional minions. Fel Scream Blast still has a target in that instance as well. Just very cleanly set up from Posesi, and Alutemu doesn't quite have the damage to close out the game. If he top decks, however, the second Wicked Stab, they're both going up to rank 3, and that would be 12 damage plus the Gyro Blade for lethal.
That's it. That's the out as I see it here for Alutemu. He's got his hands together in prayer.
No, not a passage either. He shakes his head. He can, however, clear the Jace without face tanking it if he Gyro Blades into the Arcanist. And if there's no Warblades for Posesi somehow, then maybe a passage on the next turn could save Alutemu.
I mean, okay, so we could make the argument here that he should go face and just pray for a 50-50, because that's his best shot of winning the game, because then, like you said, just double Wicked Stab will get there. Maybe even double Wicked Stab, even if there is a Warblades, could get there somehow, because you could get, like, Wicked Stab, Wicked Stab. I guess you're not playing Cutlasses in this list, are you? So that's 2 damage that's ruled out.
Yeah. It's really tough because he kind of knows that if he misses the 50-50, he's almost certainly dead without having seen Furies. And the problem is the stealth minions are hardly ever sticking around either. Oh, he misses!
Oh, no!
He knows he can't even stick the Mole because he gave Posesi back the Kurtrus Ashfallen, which can attack stealth minions, right?
Right, so he could go Hero Power, Kurtrus, Hero Power, Fury.
Lethal.
That's already lethal, yeah, it's super lethal.
Even, well, with the Warblades, now it is super lethal, but...
Yeah, fit the Deadeye.
Sure, just for fun. That means that Posesi has won the unfavorable after a completely unexpected victory in the mirror. And Alutemu has only now his ace deck, to be fair, in the Burn Shaman to try and take a reverse sweep.
That's right. We saw in his stats before the match, he is 12-4 with this Shaman, single-handedly boosting up its win rate drastically. As I think if we look at the entire field, Shaman's at just above a 50% win rate. It's very much in the middle of the pack in terms of the classes overall this week. Whereas for Alutemu, it's looking absolutely fantastic. And so he is going to have to, first of all, take down this Demon Hunter. I want to say not a great matchup right out the gate. I would favor the Demon Hunter in this one because the minions that Shaman develops are a little bit tough to stick online. The burst damage, a little bit difficult to actually get it to be lethal later on in the game. However, you know, you can hope to stick an early Wild Paw. We've seen Alutemu in this exact matchup take incredibly aggressive routes before with what did he go for? It was Novice Zapper, Coin, Bloom, Serpent Shrine on turn 1. Like, he is willing to go all in right at the start of the game in these kinds of matchups. And so, like I said, even first matchup of the sweep that Alutemu needs to hit might be unfavored. He knows his outs. He knows the way to play it to find those sneaky wins.
That is very true. He's also a certified expert at drawing Bloom Wild Paw Cavern, playing that turn 1 or turn 2, depending on whether or not he has the coin. And that early of a development is often very difficult for Demon Hunter to have to deal with the damage, let alone being constantly frozen and unable to get healing with Aldraki Warblades. We shall see, though. The Burn Shaman is a pretty interesting deck in the ways it plays around Glide, because when it gets card draw, it tends to come in big droves, like 3 at a time. So if you do go for card draw, it's either you're just not playing around Glide overall, or you're going to immediately dump a lot of cards after playing it.
How would you like a sobering fact, Gia?
Okay.
If Alutemu loses this game of Hearthstone, it is his last ever game in Grandmasters.
No! Why'd you say that? I can't accept it. I've just gotten too used to it.
I know. He's been here right from the start. Week 1, the initial season of Grandmasters way back in 2019, like 3 years ago. I still remember it as if it was yesterday. And he's been with us all the way through thick and thin, through good seasons, bad seasons, some coming so close time and again to that spot in the World Championship, but just narrowly missing out. And, well, I guess, sorry, he will have the playoffs, actually, so he will have one more week potentially next week.
Yes, that's right, Dirk.
Outside of that, the last season, this could be for him here.
That was not a sobering fact. It was a panic-inducing falsehood. I think that's the opposite.
Okay. It was a tipsy fact.
Okay.
Not a sobering fact, necessarily.
Fair
Almost
enough.
true, though. The last initial season match for Alutemu ever.
Okay. While we have been faffing on about that, I believe, as you
Rude.
guys say, Alutemu has put together a pretty solid opening curve. The Lady Vaj, always a decent option against the matchups of Warrior and Demon Hunter, where they are on the controlling side and you're trying to stick just good threats on curve. Followed up by Wild Paw Cavern, the special. It's looking pretty good for Alutemu, but Posesi does have a full clear available here with the Arcanist Fell Scream Blast. If he wants to get fancy, he could set up a Magtheridon, but I would not be willing to tank this 8 and be frozen if I were him.
Would you not? If you go Magtheridon here, like you say, you tank 8, you go down to 14, you're basically never dead, I want to say. I'd be really surprised if he can burst you down then. Or I guess it's technically possible with like Bolt, Serpent Shrine, but I'd be willing to take the risk, basically. And then next turn, if you really wanted the heal, you could even go Arcanist plus the Fellscream Blast as well to clear the board and stick a 12-12, which
Wow.
I know is not amazing versus Shaman because they can freeze it, but it gets you that full board clear and a big heal as well.
Brave. Oh man, I'm just too scared if I were Posesi here because, like you said, there are multiple freeze effects for the Shaman. The heal is a big deal, but there's also like one more stag to have to contend with, right? This is only the second one popping out, so even if you do get the clear, they're at the very least developing another. But it does, however, because of the board space issues, shut down Alutemu from doing essentially anything this turn. Forgot to account for that, because he'll miss the stag if he plays a Sleep Breaker. And maybe he just says he's okay with that because you know that Posesi's going to blow up the board anyway.
Right, yeah.
So he can just cash in some card draw. It is -1 freeze effect for the Magtheridon, but he has second Sleep Breaker. And I feel like trying to get to multicaster is very important here for Alutemu.
I mean, he could even just go Sleep Breaker pass. He doesn't have to play the freeze that he gets off it right away.
True,
and just
yeah.
save it for the Magtheridon next turn, which is, I think, the way I like it being done.
Very true. Oh, but Zessi's big reaction, I think, was about the positioning that Alutemu could have gone for. Just disrupting Fellscream Blast. This kind of shuts off the entire plan from Posesi because he's frozen.
Oh.
He can't swing into the Sleep Breaker.
Oh, I didn't think of this, did I?
Neither did I, but I'm going to take credit because I don't want to play Magtheridon for a different reason.
I knew that the next card would be Immolation Aura off the top, Gia, so that's exactly why I suggested the play.
All right. This is my composting, isn't it?
Oh my goodness. Okay, I mean, there's a couple other ways you can go about it here, right? Because obviously, Arcanist plus Immolation Aura, sure, that gets you the full clear and uses the least resources. But I do actually like getting the heal here while you can, which is what Posesi is doing to heal up for 15 here whilst also clearing the board. Oh yeah.
I remember the 15 breakpoint from the old Il'gynoth days, but nowadays it's not dealing lethal, it is just putting Posesi in a very solid position. Because his follow-up is not so bad whatsoever if you just performers for tempo, if you're clearing something, not the end of the world in the matchup, and then he can get a pretty decent Jace on curve. But that is a multicaster for Alutemu, pretty clutch. That's all spell schools represented already, I think, because he did play Landslide, a Studies, and a Windchill.
True. Yeah, okay.
Not going for it insta
What did he get?
Lady Vash.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, good point.
So I'm trying to think of counter arguments of not going multicaster, and I suppose that would be you can fit in second Sleep Breaker, and you're pretty confident you'll need Windchill again for the next turn for the Magtheridon. So he is going for a more conservative approach that actually fills out his mana guaranteed, because if he goes multicaster, he probably spends the last mana just trading Overdraft, which doesn't feel particularly good. So Posesi can get a clear with performers, even on the Death Rattle from the Snake, right?
It's exact, isn't it?
He takes all 12 trades. It's exactly 12 health on board, including the Death Rattle.
I think I like it. It's a play that clears the board and also, more importantly, keeps your weapon intact, which is, I think, quite important in this instance, because next turn you could use it with the Chaos Strike to heal for a little bit. But honestly, there's a consideration for just going like Chaos Strike pass next turn, or Chaos Strike don't swing, and then Jace the turn after to try and heal for a whole bunch if you've taken some damage in the meantime.
The important part was clearing the Staggered also, because that's the last tick of Alutemu's Wild Paw Cavern, which means that Posesi is... his face is not frozen for the near future. However, the Magtheridon can continue to be stalled. Alutemu, I believe, starts the turn with the multicaster, and then he can evaluate if he wants to Windchill as well. Most likely, yes. Leading up into a turn 8 Brukan, which is pretty nice, but he is starting to run out of freezes. It's not infinite for the Magtheridon, even though it often feels like it. Starting with Windchill, there must be some breakpoint we're not thinking about here, and I can only guess Wild Paw Cavern. if that were the draw off the top, that could put Alutemu off of just following up multicaster, but he doesn't get it, so I think he'll take the multiple card draw now.
Yeah, he's still got one wind chill left in his deck, so obviously trying to find that as soon as possible. And like you said, multicaster is the best way to do so. Weirdly enough as well, though, like, even though it's not going to be lethal next turn and probably not the turn after, depending on the draws, he's not a million miles off here. With Brucan next turn to be able to deal 6 damage and gain some health to survive against the Magtheridon later on, into, what, Novice, Bolt, Frostbite, Overdraft, Lady Vash as well, if you can find time to play that, could just find you the necessary missing pieces. Unless Posesi finds Glide off the top. Alutemu, no.
Back the other way. And the need for greed as well if he wants to keep cycling. Double need for greed.
But he got the Vash back and Brucan.
Oh
That's
my god.
Insane post-glide hand.
Yes, he can get so much value back from the Lady Vash, and like you said, the Brucan can act as a pseudo stopper against Magtheridon. It can probably still end up going face, but it'll take some effort for Posesi to get through the 2/2/3s that I assume Alutemu would take. But okay, it is still Posesi's turn. Is he going to take 3 draws even though it doesn't progress quest? I feel like yes, resources are good, but he prioritizes getting rid of the multicaster here. Doesn't want to face tank any more damage.
I don't think this is a swing on this turn either. You have such a good shot at hitting Fury or even just Jace in the next 1 or 2 turns to really ramp up your damage, your healing, sorry.
All right, here we go. Alutemu going to load up the good hero power now, which is the damage one and probably the taunts.
I'd guess so. Any chance of stopping that 12-12 going face is absolutely worth it. And obviously there is one weapon swing that can take out one of the 2/3s, but currently no actual way to take out the other one. So Posesi, I'd have to imagine, is going to be starting with... well, I guess double jump, and then you could go for need for greed afterwards if necessary. But that Chaos Leech is very tempting to me indeed.
Yeah. I was honestly looking at the skull, but it's not that much different from need for greed, to be fair. And getting to push the 12 damage face is relevant here, even though Posesi's overall burst potential is gutted by the fact that he's used expendable performers. He can just pretty comfortably set up a 3-turn lethal with the Magtheridon if he feels that Alutemu's out of freezes, and he has used a whole bunch of them, and Posesi glided back tons of resources. Okay, quest complete for Posesi. Hero power to take down the 2/3, and he has Demon Render Kurtrus in hand as well if he needs some more burst damage. All of the necessary pieces have appeared. Oh, and with the Fel Barrage, he even gets to maintain the Aljaki Warblades for more healing.
True, yeah. And the Demon Render Kurtrus next turn is just so perfectly going to be able to take out these potential extra taunts that Alutemu, I think, is going to be summoning with his hero power on this turn. I'm pretty sure that's more taunts as opposed to the air or the water invocation, which is just perfect. The bats can get through and, of course, refresh his hero power a couple times as well. And that means that Alutemu should be feeling very scared indeed, unless Bash Prime can dig him out of this one.
He really does have to put a lot of work in. I think Alutemu is just calculating if Demon Render Kurtrus is played, can he get through the 29? Well, it's going to be even higher than that with the Aljaki Warblade swing. Let's say just working with 35. And he says most likely not, but he can survive against Magtheridon plus even 4 hero powers, right? It's actually just 20 that can go face. Alutemu would be alive at 1. Oh, sorry, there's not the mana to go 4 hero powers, but assuming there's a Deadeye, for example. So knowing that he's alive no matter what this turn, just goes for the Vash Prime and gets rid of the Aljaki Warblades to remove the damage, the healing possibilities from Posesi. Gets the Fire Invocation for the next turn, but he doesn't really have that much damage without a Novice Zapper quite yet.
even with a novice zapper, like how much you're looking at? 2 overloads. So overdrafts are doing, well, one of them does 3. So it'll be 4, 4, 12, 15, 21 with the hero power as well. And that's in the perfect world that you get novice zapper off the top, at which point Posesi is just going to be far out of range, because if nothing else, just Kurtrus Demon Render on this turn, I think is a very game-winning-y type of play.
Maybe the perfect world isn't novice zapper. Maybe it's multicaster into Bloom Zapper. Would he have the mana to play all of that and the Frostbites? I'm not quite sure yet. Oh wait,
There are
Kurtrus.
only 2 4s.
I didn't notice. I didn't know they were so tiny.
Little baby bats.
And that means that the Viper sticks around,
Uh-huh.
which is kind of offset by the fact that Posesi gains armor. But I think Alutemu still has some outs here. The Wind Chill, okay. Multicaster?
Oh, okay, so Zapper, Bloom, Bolt. There enough mana left over? Like, it's got to be pretty much exactly all combo cards here for there to be any chance, right?
Right. I honestly cannot do the math quick enough here. Alutemu also has to think about a way that he can survive the turn, if not just go for multicaster.
that's
And
Vash.
that is... It is! Oh, the Alutemu special! Lady Vash into Lady Vash, but no!
Okay,
But he can still
Bloom
multicaster.
Yeah. Running
Oh,
out of
but-
mana very quickly.
He can still hit another Bloom, I think.
Okay.
Potentially. How much is this?
No!
enough.
Oh.
But he's not dead either, right? Posesi doesn't have any rush effect or damage in
Oh,
hand.
he has to be dead, right?
I mean,
Surely.
very likely, but not 100%.
Even just glide is lethal. Like, if you just outcast that glide, Alutemu has lost the game.
Fair enough. Oh man, Alutemu looking resigned, and we cannot blame him whatsoever. That glide from a few turns ago was just too much. Posesi only needs a tiny little bit of damage here, or he can go for the glide disruption like you were talking about. So many outs, no Kurtrus quest reward needed. That's the Chaos Strike, and that is the 3-0 sweep. And like that, my prediction goes down as well, Daruk. Both of our picked players losing 0-3, but congratulations to Posesi. That was just a very clean series, and perhaps my favorite Demon Hunter mirror I've ever seen in Game 1.
Yeah, super well played. I mean, I think at the end there, Posesi was just going through the numbers. He knew that he was pretty much guaranteed or very, very likely to win for quite a long time in that final game. Kind of same deal for the second game. But that first one, he was even more surprised than us that he was coming out the victor there, like hitting exactly double discounted, what was it, the Deadeye and the Performers one after the other on the quest, which seemed like a completely dead hand, but turned out to just be the absolute nuts in that game to lead him to a swift victory. As I was erroneously saying earlier, or as I wasn't saying earlier, I suppose, this is not Alutemu's final game in Grandmasters. He still has a shot in playoffs. However, this does lock him out of last call, with having accrued... how many points at the end of all of this? Alutemu at 6 points at the end of the season. It's not bad. He got himself to 2 semi-finals in the last 2 weeks, which is much better than things were looking after his 0-2 performance in the first week. And so even though we'll be seeing him in playoffs in a couple weeks' time, he won't be coming back for the final season of Grandmasters. Whereas Posesi moves up to 7 points, which is, I think, just enough to dethrone Lambi series and lock us in for our last call, Gia, unless I'm making very much of a big mistake, and I don't take this as official ruling, but it does currently look like our last call is going to be Mighty, Okashinsuke, Chonsu, and Lambi series. And Posesi, sorry, not Lambi series. Yes, to lock it out.
Wow, that is a stacked 4 players indeed to represent APAC later on this year. Of course, we'll wait on final confirmation, but that does have a lot of the implications for the weekend locked up, right? Perhaps this last match will also give us final information on who is going through with first and second seeding and getting the auto win going through to next 2 weeks from now, rather, at the playoffs, as next week is the Masters Tour. Just very, very cool stuff. And honestly, Derek, this is such a stacked grand final. We have Chonsu, the winner of last week, and has looked honestly like the best player of the weekend. I'll say that full stop. I think he's had the cleanest play, even though Posesi did overall have a very good series. I think he recognizes that he messed up a little bit with the Magtheridon play and got bailed out by the top deck of Immolation Aura, realizing that a bit of positioning could disrupt his combo. But I do think that Posesi will have his head on straight for the finals, because in complete contrast to yesterday, we are already down to our last match of the day.
Yeah, what is it? 2 hours down, 2 matches down as well. We are flying through this day here in Asia Pacific. And for Chonsu versus Posesi in our final game, cannot wait to see how this one's going to shake out. So we're going to go to a break before the final match. We need to let Posesi have a little rest, make sure his ban strategy and whatever it may be is all in order. So in around 10 minutes, I think we're going to be back with the finals of week 3 of Asia Pacific. The final match before we head to the Masters Tour next week. And then, of course, the playoffs in 2 weeks' time. So make sure you don't miss it. Be back here when the match starts very shortly for the finals of week 3 of APAC Grandmasters. Welcome back to the grand finals of week 3 here in Asia Pacific Hearthstone Grandmasters, and a cracker of a finals we do have, Gia. Chonsu versus Posesi. Chonsu now decidedly top of the leaderboard, guaranteed that first or second finish. So really for him, this is about obviously the $500 extra prize money that he would get should he win, and also just getting that back-to-back victory. It doesn't happen all too often that we see players getting 2 weekly wins in a row in Grandmasters, especially in just a format that's only 3 weeks long before we head to playoffs.
I mean, the only time I remember it happening was Alan last season, after turning it around with a very, very poor start. But Chonsu here, I feel like, is also somewhat of a late bloomer, not within the course of one season, but within the course of his entire Grandmasters run. Now that we are in sort of the swan song of the Grandmasters program as a whole, it's nice to see that Chonsu has finally come into his own, because we have repeatedly said that he is a top caliber player. The results haven't been there so far, but this season he really has turned it around, and I think it's evident why. We can see that he's so confident in his play. Something about the meta and the decks that he chooses really suits him, and I'd like to see that pattern continue. But obviously the biggest hurdle that he'll have to scale is none other than the current world champion.
It is impressive to see Posesi still dominating this year after his World Championship victory. It's impressive, but it's not surprising, I suppose we should say. He's had very few mistakes so far. His overall play does seem to be very much on point. However, I do think in terms of his lineup construction, you know, he's made it to the final, so he's done something right here. It's clearly a good lineup overall, but I do still have a question mark about that Priest, because Last Hero Standing can very much cover up some of the inconsistencies in your lineup by just 3-0ing with the other decks. You never have to play a bad deck if you just do very well with the other ones, which is kind of the positives and the negatives of Last Hero Standing. It encourages creativity a little bit more, because if you're left with a bad deck, it doesn't necessarily mean that you've just lost the entire tournament. But having said that, when we get down to it, Rogue for Chonsu up first versus Priest for Posesi up first. If Chonsu wins this game, which I think we both expect he probably will, because Rogue feels like a very good matchup into Priest, what does Posesi do? Demon Hunter and Rogue left over as his 2 remaining decks. It's a mirror that he has as the best matchup after losing game 1 of a series, which is never what you want to see in Last Hero Standing.
That's right. I think Posesi knows overall he's heavily unfavored into Chonsu's lineup, and the Priest just doesn't have any good matchups where I look. Maybe into Libram Paladin. That's honestly not a matchup I've seen, because both decks feel a little bit off meta at the moment. But because that Priest doesn't necessarily have a Q snipe that you want to save it for, I think it makes sense to queue it up first as a potential deck that he can still try and take the win even after he doesn't win with that deck in particular. However, like you said, there's no particularly good way to answer the Quest Rogue on Chonsu's side, so Posesi will have to rely on just skill in the mirror, and so far he's shown very, very good matchup understanding. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves, I don't think, because this deck, while it is quite a heavy unfavorable against Quest Rogue, I would say, because the Miracle Priest only runs a couple minions and the Rogue has well enough removal to deal with them. The Priest can sometimes put together this blisteringly fast start. They can generate clears on Rogue's minions, and maybe an additional win condition as well from the Draconic Studies, even after a couple of their minions have been removed by the Assassins.
That is true. Yeah, this is the deck that can win any matchup if the hand is playing ball, because even though we talk about the power of Fizz Flash disruptors for the Rogue, they might not get them. The power of Assassin, they might not draw them. They might not be cheap enough. They might not be able to combo them. There are a lot of things that can go wrong. And if Posesi is just able to let rip with Bloodweaver, Copy It, Blessing of...
Just bless.
Fortitude, sorry. Yeah, just bless Fortitude, sorry, Powered Fortitude, whatever it may be. Make a nice big board. Rogue can struggle with that because they really don't have enough ways to keep up with tempo unless they hit those powerful assassination or sap effects.
And I can't wait till they print a card called Blessing of Up. That's going to be our card, Derek. But it might be a Paladin card, unfortunately. All right, Chonsu starting with the trade on the Cutlass, which is not actually guaranteed allowing him to play Quest on 1 if the card he gets is a spell, and that's what's discounted. But I guess Chonsu is just okay with not playing Quest on 1 because he doesn't have an SA card to begin with.
Yeah, I mean,
playable in the near future, sorry.
Well, yeah, I mean, the play is Quest SI7 Agent. I've never seen the combo be activated with the Quest before, but actually pretty sick when you consider it, because yeah, there was literally no reason to play it with no way for Posesi to make the Quest cost more again. Yeah, you may as well just save it until it's necessary. For the options available here, however, actually really close. Another insight, even though you have a minion and another insight in hand, is still very tempting to me, just to guarantee yourself both Nazmani and Malagos, because that's when you can really start popping off potentially.
It is, but if we talk about the balance of fuel and sinks that we often do in Miracle Priest, I would say there's a little bit too much of the sinks here for Posesi. That Power Word Fortitude also looking like it could delay the pop-off turn. So I actually do like the Thrive pick to look for specifically palm reading, which is what Posesi really needs to make the hand explode. And as for Chonsu, we are going to see the cute Quest played just to get the combo damage. I kind of wondered whether the damage is even relevant, because I think common wisdom would have you believe that damaging Priest, if you are going to do it, it should come in large increments. Otherwise, you're just giving them activations for Gift of the Naru. However, the 2 damage still means Gift of the Naru is not drawing a card just yet, so it's fine.
All right, I think that with this hand, wow, I was going to say, as tempting as it is to use Tenwu, you should be kind of cautious to do so, just because of how brutally powerful it is with the SI7 Assassin slotted in as well, to be able to reduce it down to 1, then it goes down to 0 because the discounting effects, and you can basically kill 2 minions very, very efficiently in 1 turn. But he could still end up with either leaving the Tenwu on board, or just shadow stepping it back to hand and saving it. I don't think would be absurd either.
I don't mind the usage of the Tenwu, because while it does have a lot of utility with the Assassin later on, he's just kind of leveraging the Tenwu to discount the Assassin in the first place, which you need to do by playing other SI cards and progressing the quest. And the Tenwu being used to copy any SI just as another played one means that he can more easily activate Assassin in the future. For Posesi, though, he does have access to Horn if he wants to draw either Nazmani or Malagos and corrupt the other insight, but Posesi says he doesn't want another potential mana sink in hand just yet. Very interesting.
Yeah, I guess it's also just because it would make Power Word Fortitude more expensive next turn, and there's a good chance he's looking at something like Nazmani, Coin, Gift, and then Fortitude, which if he draws 1 more spell would still have 7 spells left in hand, making it cost 1. So it's kind of awkward as to how he wants to get this Fortitude played, basically for the cheapest possible, whilst also having as many Nazmanis on board as possible.
Yeah, he would probably still have to start the turn with Nazmani Fortitude, but that's okay, even though he misses on 1 more spell post second Nazmani being on the board care of the Gift of Luminance. He still has at least the Desperate Prayer and a couple 1-cost spells that are, I would say, fairly likely to keep the train going if he decides to pop off next turn at all, because we could see him delay further and try to corrupt the insight, but given that he didn't play Horn last turn, it does feel like he's going in soon. Chonsu, however, choosing the ways to progress the quest does just end up on double SI card, which seemed like the most straightforward play for the turn. I don't think there was much utility to Vanessa getting him, what was it, Thrive as the last thing played by Posesi?
Yes, yeah, I didn't really like the look of that either. But now it is undeniably time to go in here. I think Posesi does have to play the Fortitude first and then the Gift of Luminance if he wants it to cost 0, which is fine. He still has a lot of ways to keep this rolling. Shard is perfectly fine here, just as a 0 mana card. Gift to draw an extra card. The question is whether or not he'll be able to play Malagos when he draws it, which currently I want to say it doesn't look like it, but depending what comes off the Gift, it might be close.
Yeah, if that's another 1-0 cost spell, because he can very likely discount Nazmani. Okay, he can just play it here. The train is going and it is not stopping. That's a palm reading. If he can discount it to be playable and discover a cheap spell, that could mean playable Malagos. Let's see, Chonsu is stressed out, but the palm reading is missed. The train ends there. And that is a huge deal because Posesi's not actually even able to clear the whole board, which means that the 2-4 and 3-3 sticking around can deal with the 2-5 Nazmani, and the other ones can just be assassinated.
All the difference in the world here. Obviously with Posesi having to stop the train there. However, I will say, being able to go Malagos into palm reading next turn, even if you have no Nazmanis on board, is still a potentially very powerful play. You could get down Malagos plus a power word Fortitude, bless it up. You know, if they've used both effects from the SI7 Assassin, that big dragon alone could lead you through to victory.
Yeah, very true. I don't see any reason that he would potentially bless before, like, he's able to attack, because maybe the 2 health breakpoint I don't feel is particularly relevant, but at the very least, following up this wave of threats immediately with the Malagos and the palm reading is, of course, the best way to approach it. Chonsu mostly gassed out of resources for now. He does, of course, still have scabs, which is very scary for Posesi. So yeah, he definitely won't bless next turn, right? Because he knows scabs Fizz Flash is available. Gives Posesi a smite, fair enough.
Oh man, and you know what? Low-key, the most dire, or what, another bad thing I suppose I should say, not the most dire thing about this situation for Posesi, is even if he finds a way to copy that SI7 operative, which we've so often seen can be a kind of backup win condition, it's silenced now, so he's not even going to be able to get the effect of re-stealthing it over and over again.
It's all right. There's still the backup win condition, which is these draconic studies. Kazaka-san, anybody?
I'm down. I'm down to clown. All 3 of them? Probably smite, but come on.
Probably smite. What he actually needs is more AoE, I would say, because he doesn't have 0 answers for his Spymaster Scabs. He can actually silence away the stealth, and if there is enough AoE, he could potentially try and win off of a control game plan, but these discovers are not particularly helpful towards that game plan. That being said, with 3 studies, if he discovers a Deathwing, it would actually be playable next turn. They all cost 0, so the studies discounts would stack, stack, stack.
True, or even an Onyxia, right? You could go silence Onyxia and kill off the scabs that way. There's no reason to play them this turn unless you're planning on playing a Brightwing, which I would not be planning on doing.
Yeah, I agree. Chonsu doesn't play Neophyte, so he doesn't have the capability to disrupt these 0 cost spells either. There is a huge amount of threat coming back the other way though, so if Posesi doesn't find a way to blow up the board, then he is still in a dire position, but he's got 3 shots at finding a dragon that can do it.
And, you know, if he can find specifically Onyxia, kind of winning this game. Like, you just kill off the scabs immediately and kill off everything else. It's a pretty good position.
Yeah, I'd argue the Deathwing is still good enough, even though you discard quite a few cards. But yeah, 3 shots at relevant dragons. Here we go. I guess it's Renew first, sure. You can find another studies. Plague. Maybe it's just Desperate Prayer. I don't know.
Yeah, Prayer's kind of talking to me here.
All right. With
Circus.
Brightwing and never play it. Just the cheapest. Sure. I don't know. Deathwing.
Deathwing. Okay.
Yes, it's playable this turn. 100%. And if you don't discard the Fortitude, you can fortify it, but maybe that's not necessary. Oh, wrong Onyxia!
Oh. Onyxia before she glowed up.
Before she got glidden?
Yeah.
You probably still just take it.
I think I preferred the Hothead just because you can go for some kind of play with like a Hothead gift maybe to put a bunch of taunts in the way, but yeah.
Okay, what does he lose? He loses the Malik. Oh, can you get the hover, please? I didn't see. But losing the Devour is a big deal, and not being able to play Fortitude before discarding the cards is awful as well. But actually, you know, the Onyxia is intact, and she might still get there on turn 9 as a board redevelopment. Problem is, Chonsu has just Informant, which is very powerful here. Or Informant and Stealth it, rather. He doesn't want to give any of those to Posesi. They're all for their value.
Yeah, those are all good. I do agree with palm readings just because you know that they have at least 2 dragons in hand if you were keeping track of hand positioning. And so the palm readings is likely to be quite poor. Stealth here, obviously incredibly annoying. Posesi wishing he had a taunt, which he actually had a couple of options to take, but passed them up both times.
Bless, strangely, not really adding that much damage for Chonsu. It only adds health here because the attack is already at 11. Soul Mirror a little bit short of being playable, but he can survive on board with the Desperate Prayer and the... Oh, trading Deathwing. I hate it, but he kind of has to. Right? I mean, not that on board. Oh, yeah, it's 1 off. Okay, he's going for the 2-turn of his own. Fair enough. Oh,
with
no.
the Bless as well, is it...
It is lethal.
Still not lethal, right?
No, you bless the Spyomatic and then it's lethal, right? Oh.
4.
Oh, wait. No. Yeah, it's 2 off.
Quite.
Forgot to count the hero power. My bad.
Well, it's 1 off even, right? Oh, no. Yeah. Or 2 off, I guess, actually, with the...
Yeah.
We're in the middle.
Okay. He's trading. Being as safe as possible. This gives him a breakpoint to survive Wicked Stab as well.
Oh my goodness, this is so close. The other Informant is so good, but Soul Mirror of all cards could be what clutches it out.
Yep. Whether or not Chonsu unstealths this minion, it can be cleared by Soul Mirror. Same with everything else that Chonsu can develop this turn.
So the real question is whether or not he clears, right? Because a swing face of the weapon plus a trade actually...
Well, if I were... I mean, yes, but if I were Chonsu, I'd never play around a generated Soul Mirror at this instant, because what's his win condition? If he clears here, he just doesn't have enough damage. I don't know. Oh, he's playing it safe. Okay, he's hoping that this Informant by itself can get there, which, fair enough, it's going to have a lot of health. But as it happens, Soul Mirror is just as punishing against this board too. Posesi's just getting there!
Oh man, like low-key, you wish this Bless only had the first part of the text. Like if it was 2 mana plus 2 health, fantastic. That might actually be able to get you there, but not now. Maestra off of the Brightwing is a hilarious way to close it out, but the Soul Mirror, it means this game's just wide open, and Posesi, I think, unless there's some really good top decks, is just kind of winning.
Yeah, I don't think the game's wide open. In fact, Chonsu... the only real threat he can put forward now is Smuggler, I think.
Right.
And even then, I don't think most of those outcomes are enough to set up a 2-turn lethal, because Posesi can pretty comfortably do that himself with Onyxia Broodmother.
Oh no!
Oh no!
Oh.
It's the Deathwing, Derek! The Deathwing!
Man, it's so clutch.
Triple Draconic Studies. It's all off the back of that palm reading post Malagos. You don't often see it, but man, did it come in clutch here. Posesi was ready.
Kind of off the back of that trade, right? Like if he'd gone face there for, what was it, 11 damage, maybe he could have got there with just a couple of extra lucky hits with Sinister, with the Wicked Stabs, I don't know, something like that.
Oh, Chonsu was praying that the Discovered Dragon wasn't threatening, but this Onyxia is pushing 14 with all her whelps. To be fair, that is a 3-turn lethal setup, not just 2. So if Chonsu can top deck Secret Passage into Smuggler, generate some stealth minions, maybe there's a way. I don't think there's a way.
Yeah, I don't think with this little time. Power Infusion as well. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that makes it a 2-turn clock instead of 3. huge. I mean, so would Psyche Split, to be fair. All right, Chonsu needs a miracle.
No Shadowcrafter scabs. The damage in hand is never going to be getting there. I don't think there's any generation he can hit either. SI7 agent is not the miracle he needed, and now finally, this guy's toast. Chonsu going down 0-1 versus the Miracle Priest. I never should have doubted.
Who was I to call this a heavy unfavorable? Posesi finds a way. Chonsu counting if he can survive on board, and yes, he can if he stabs and agents the Onyxia, but boy, does that feel like losing in the long run.
Yeah, sure. I guess you do it. Just to... Maybe if your opponent has terrible top deck, and then you get... Assassin into the 3-5. I think you're still just dead the turn after at that point, though.
Right.
Swindle into...
Passage
you only get one
into...
spell. Yeah.
Passage into Assassin Smuggler for Taunt.
Okay, okay.
Something like that. Chonsu holding on by a tiny, tiny thread for some sort of fatigue win condition, because to be fair, Posesi is almost gassed out as well. Desperate Prayer doesn't really help his value situation, but the Psyche Split will create yet another problem for Chonsu.
Yes.
Last card for Posesi, I believe, is Gift of the Naru, which was also just air. He doesn't want to fatigue further, so this is actually Posesi's very last push. So if Chonsu can get some Miracle Smuggler outcomes, maybe we're talking. He hits Passage off of the Swindle, only 7 mana to work with, but there's still Assassin in the deck.
Oh, he got Assassin in step!
Oh my god, is he
This
alive?
actually gets there! This actually gets there, Gia!
He has Extortion as well. Wait, he won! He just fully clears.
That's just GG! No way!
No way!
What?
Oh my god.
I always
game,
doubted.
Derek.
I always doubted you never bring Miracle Priest.
What the heck was this game? I can't believe it! Chonsu found a way! He hung in there by clearing the Onyxia, hoping and praying that he would have the clear on the rest of the whelps, and he did manage it. Posesi, that's a heartbreaker. He felt like he was so far in the lead. Were already calling the game, but Chonsu held in there, and he was heavily rewarded.
Unbelievable. What a game from Chonsu. So disciplined to stay in there right until the end, even finding, what was it, Wicked Stab into the SI7 agent to clear off the Onyxia. And that was even after Posesi got really lucky, first of all getting the Deathwing, and then being able to save both dragons off the Deathwing as well was like a really fortunate outcome. Like, all the cards he got rid of were kind of bad. Like Bless, sure, that would have been nice to be able to kill his opponent a bit quicker maybe, but mostly it was kind of the Miracle Priesty cards. He kept the meat of the hand, but it still wasn't enough, and Chonsu actually fatigued the Miracle Priest. Unbelievable.
So cool the way the games have panned out this weekend. I couldn't be happier with it, Derek, but that's only game one. And in a sort of continuation of the weird fashion we've been seeing, yes, most of Posesi's games have gone according to who's favored in terms of the result, but the way we get to that result has been nothing we could ever predict, expect, or even script right to the best of our abilities. So despite this very, very unusual pan out to the game, we do have the rogue going up, which is on paper the result that we can expect. And now Posesi is in the position we were talking about at the beginning of the series of having no favorable matchup to Q. The best he's got is the 50-50.
I agree, yeah. I don't think there's any room for sneaky, weird queuing, mind games, whatever with Demon Hunter. You just have to try and take the 50-50 on the Quest Rogue. But I'm wrong again. Instantly, Posesi just onsta queuing the Fell Demon Hunter here, seeing that as his best shot of taking the series. I mean, if we look at how the series goes, if he queues Rogue and wins, his opponent is going to queue what, Paladin or Demon Hunter, neither of which are good matchups. I don't know. Posesi's going to have to win an unfavorable, I think, to win the series overall, but I didn't necessarily think that this was the time to do so.
Yeah, I honestly don't know what's going through his head, because I feel like the Rogue had a better shot of sweeping from here, and obviously Posesi can't afford to lose any. I mean, technically he can lose on the Demon Hunter and then try and sweep the Rogue. So if you look at it as the Demon Hunter has no favorables to begin with, then sure, you can just try and take a reverse sweep. And to be fair to Posesi, he did actually win this matchup versus Alutemu just a few minutes ago. So perhaps something is brewing in there that we are not aware of. But for the opening hand, it's already pretty interesting as to whether he wants to keep some removal alongside the quest. I'd heavily considered the Fel Barrage if we were talking about the stealth version of the deck that and Posesi are both running, but Chonsu is not. So I feel Posesi should just focus on finding card draw, Spectral Sight, etc.
Agreed completely. Glide left-hand position, that feels like a pretty good starting hand. You just got to hope your opponent doesn't have too fast of a starting hand in their own right so they can dump all their cards before Glide even comes online. But given that your Glide can come down on turn 3, that's quite unlikely to happen, as it looks like Chonsu 2 games in a row could be considering quest into SI7 agent. But okay, Skulker off the top, perfect way to get this game rolling, means we won't be seeing that play twice.
Posesi did choose to go for Quest on 1 this time, potentially because he just wanted to lead up into Chaos Strike on turn 2. I think that's reasonable, even though he doesn't have a target. It's just kind of cycling. It doesn't, however, like dump cards from hand if he's leading up into Coin Glide, but that might not be the play for Posesi. It could be equip Warblades and delay Glide for until Chonsu has more cards in hand.
Okay, bouncing it back just to get quicker quest completion. I think as we've seen versus Demon Hunter, this is just definitely the meta, right? This is how you're supposed to approach the matchup. And then following it up with probably Operative, I want to say, just for higher health.
This guy's toast.
It was definitely close. Chonsu is taking the more aggressive stance here. I was gonna say if there's an argument for Agent, it's to be that you get the combo damage right now, but he still had the capability of comboing it out the next turn. So clearly he does just value the higher attack on the Agent, but it's going to be a very simple matter for Posesi to get rid of it. What Chonsu has succeeded in, though, is making Posesi's Outcast Glide actually very, very awkward. So few cards in hand for Chonsu that the Glide would actually be helping him, but Posesi is potentially just holding on to the Glide for the Scab's turn instead.
It does seem that way, but whether it's good or bad for him, I'm not entirely sure. The Scabs is going to be a good long ways off here, so he's going to have to find some other way of progressing his own game plan without playing the Glide here in Outcast position. Obviously, he could try and manipulate something with Illidari Studies, Glide left-hand side, and then draw another card, and then play it then in non-Outcast. But either way, I think this is still working very much in Posesi's favor, because extra mana does work a lot nicer for the Demon Hunter than it does for the Rogue, especially when the Rogue has literally nothing to do.
Yeah, that's a terrible draw for Chonsu here. No Swindle, no Passage, and no SI cards. Best he can do to progress the quest is bounce the Operative, which is quite a low value target, but I do think he should go for it just to get that mana expenditure out of the way. Hopefully, he can find a Passage in the near future and then just have all of that mana available to get to Scabs as soon as possible. Meanwhile, for Posesi, that's a pretty good draw. He can play even both Arcanists to get the 10 healing. I don't think it's an overcommittal.
It's the problem is though that even though it's okay now. Okay, I was going to say the problem is that it's a little bit worse into Scabs, right? Because then you've used up both Arcanists, which is very often your primary way of clearing off Scabs when it does come down. However, if they play Scabs the turn it's generated, then it's bad for you. But if they leave Scabs in hand and you can shuffle it back in, then you might not need the Arcanist. And as it just so turns out, Chonsu has made the play that leaves Scabs in hand. So Posesi is going to be able to get it back into the deck and gets the benefit of a huge heal. It works out great for Posesi with this line.
Yeah, the glide is going to be pretty clutch here, but if Chonsu feels like he's quite vulnerable to glide at the moment, he can go for a pretty aggressive Fizz Flash just to dump more cards from his hand and sort of make the contingency that, okay, if I lose Scabs, at least I get back 4 cards from the deck, and one of them is not a Gizmo, which would be a pretty poor top deck at the moment. Alternatively, just leave the Fizz Flash in hand, because giving back an Arcanist also doesn't feel like the greatest thing in the world, even though it's not immediately playable. It does present ways to deal with the Scabs in the near future.
All right, Coin Glide is definitely where my head's at. I don't think there's any reason to go for Illidari Studies first. Generally, you just want to do that afterwards, because then you can guarantee whatever cards you generate will still be in a outcast position, no matter where the Illidari Studies ends up in hand. And finding himself Immolation Aura to go alongside it, sure, I guess it's fine just to go with the hero power to take out the 5/5.
It is a clear, but Posesi actually has the potential to double quest complete this turn, depending on what he gets off Spectral Sight. And that's double Spectral Sight. Yeah, with double jump, it works, right?
You're right. You'd have to go right Spectral Sight first, though, in order to... and then pray that you don't get glide off the double jump. But yeah, it works out.
But he would rather not do that in favor of clearing the board, which of course also has its merits. That 5/5 was actually quite scary with Battlegrounds Battlemaster coming off the glide for Chonsu. He actually gets a decent amount of resources post-glide, which is the legacy of going for the leave Scabs in hand play, but he used basically every other resource.
Okay.
Oh.
Passage in hand, Smuggler as well.
Yep.
This is a good post-glide hand. This is going to be difficult for Posesi to find the time to play Kurtrus, depending on what 7 cost is generated here.
Smells like.
Well, let's see. There's 7. Oh, Mountain Bear is excellent. I was going to say 7 is generally a lot worse than 8. The average outcome, there's a ton of Battle Cry-based 7 cost minions, which means that you don't get the Battle Cry and they're often understated. But this is a Death Rattle, which is highly problematic. Going to spawn 2/4 taunts. And Posesi can't get through that quite easily.
If a tradable is found here, though, I believe that quest could be completed and Kurtrus played on this turn. But obviously double jump can no longer offer that, so it's going to have to be some other route here. Probably Maggie T.
True. I'm trying to figure out if you can clear both the tokens and the first half of the Mountain Bear so you can get rid of the Death Rattle of the Mountain Bear using Magtheridon, but I think it works out being just a little bit short, because he would have to go like Magtheridon, Immolation plus Fell Scream to deal with the 1/3 tokens, and then the Immolation plus Kurtrus is 1 short of dealing with the first half of the Mountain Bear, so it's just a little bit short, but he is just going to go for a clear without Magtheridon instead, or rather not a full clear, just dumping cards to go for a glide again.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, to be fair, he can draw a lot of really good cards that are not specifically, like, it doesn't have to revolve around the Kurtrus quest reward here. He could get himself Jace, obviously a Magtheridon clear. Kurtrus Demon Render is fantastic in its own right.
True. Chonsu with the passage has a chance to find his Scab. Still cannot locate it, but an Informant, you will not turn that down. And probably just play the Assassin. Yep, load up the Informant. What's it, like a 12/12 now or something?
It's absolutely monstrous, yeah.
13! Oh!
Close.
All right.
Which means that Demon Render Kurtrus alone I don't see as being good enough, because there will still be, what, 19 on the board. A Wicked Stab will be able to close it out instantly. but you could go Kurtrus, Demons plus extra hero powers to take out all the 2 attack minions, and then Fell Barrage to take out the 4/4, I think leaves you alive in a lot of worlds.
But it doesn't feel like winning the game, does it? And there's not much else he can go for. No further card draw. No way to silence the 13/13. It looks like Posesi is just slowly being pushed out of the game. Dreadlord's Bite, does that give him any break points for the Fell Barrage? No, it doesn't.
Everything's at 4.
Yeah. I think Chonsu's just got it.
Okay, so if he goes, there are 5 attacks, that's fine. They could take out both the 2/4s. Or you could just let rip with Fell Barrage first. If there was a way to guarantee it so you get to value trade and take out the 4/4, but he's just saying it's fine for him to sacrifice a bat instead.
Okay, fair enough. It's a very confusing turn.
Okay, there was definitely...
Oh, wow.
Okay. I was gonna say there was definitely a better way to do it with Fellfire Deadeye in order to clear off more from the board, but that would have locked out the out of expendable performers off the top, which is, I think, what Posesi was trying to play for. And so I think even though it meant a weaker turn immediately, I do respect his line of just setting up for a potential win with the performers. However, as we saw, all of that pales in comparison to the BGB, bringing Chonsu up 2 games to 0.
Right, the expected outcome. Once again, Chonsu very cleverly saying that even if you glide back a Scabs, on average, 4 cards from his deck should be enough to get the job done. And the consistency of threats that you get from SI7 Smuggler being in the deck alongside Informant, just building up higher and higher stats. It's just a little bit too much for Demon Hunter to deal with in most circumstances. So that does mean that Posesi is now on his last legs. Quest Rogue, the only deck remaining. He has to take a mirror into 2 much more doable matchups, to be fair, in order to win the series. But first of all, we have the 50-50, but it's not a complete mirror in terms of deck list, because as we know, Posesi is running the Stealth package instead of the Foxy Fraud Swindle that Chonsu has, and Vanessa, I suppose. Posesi is running Spy Mistresses and Greyheart Sages, and has also found room for Cult Neophyte.
Yeah, found room for Neophyte, found room for Scabs as well, as in Scabs Cutter Butter, the 4-drop, which is, I think, also going to be a pretty valuable inclusion in these very tempo-dense matchups where you do have to be pulling ahead as quickly as possible before they can get their really big, powerful clears online with the Assassins and Fizz Flashes later on. Little interesting to see Chonsu hold on to the SI7 Smuggler, I have to say, as generally it's one of the lowest priority SI cards to play early on.
It is, but it feels like Chonsu's just shown us the way to leverage it even in the early game. Even if you're just getting Wisps and 1-drops, the way that it generates a token on top of being a 1/3 body itself is pretty powerful in these board-based mirrors, just to give you more options for trading tools.
Man, this is such old school Hearthstone. A coin SI and then your opponent can't kill it because they can't combo their SI unless they have backstab, but not so much here.
They do have Extortion, but that's very mana inefficient, to the point that Chonsu is just going to play the 3/3 out without combo effect, and I think that's correct. He can go Extortion into Smuggler next turn.
Okay, interesting.
This guy's toast.
Kind of thought that would just be trade Smuggler and then maybe end up bouncing the Smuggler as well to round out the turn. But I guess he just has gets more immediate tempo this way, and also can just set up for a bigger Smuggler later on instead.
Right. It sets up the dagger, which is not irrelevant in the matchup as well, depending especially on what breakpoints the Smugglers are at. If it's still at like 0 or 1 cost, you can still get rid of a couple minions it summons. Ooh, Crab Rider. In a while. Health total on that pretty annoying for Posesi, but that Extortion is such a nice pickup to go alongside his Smuggler play.
Yeah, perfectly just smooth out the mana. Next turn, you've got yourself Spy Mistress plus Assassin, or even attack into the Crab Rider here and play Spy Mistress now, right? Because the Dark Glare refreshes her mana.
Very cool. A great spot.
That's sick.
The Spy Mistress, there's simply no way for Chonsu to interact with that. All right, Chonsu has to pull something out the bag here. And that is not a good one to find. SI7 Informant going to challenge Dark Glare, and he can, if he wants, just put this the stealth, not for the stealth effect, but for the 2 attack on the Crab Rider, so it can actually take a value trade. I think that has quite a bit of utility here.
I think I like just taking out the Dark Glare actually straight away.
True. Yeah.
More so than a VT. This 6/6 is a little tricky to deal with still. Wow, okay.
All right, he just sets up for the BGBM instead, which, to be fair, he doesn't have to unstealth the 8/6 in the near future. It's just saying, Posesi, I'm going to call your bluff. I don't think you have enough damage to race. And Chonsu, meanwhile, has another Informant that's going to be tough for Posesi to remove in theory, but he does actually have Fizz Flash and Assassin. So in terms of Chonsu's actual lethal setup, it's only 16 that he can get guaranteed.
And so for Posesi, he can again abuse the effect on Dark Glare if he wants, with essentially a free hidden Gyro Blade here in order to take out the 1/3, which I think I like, and then leading up into Secret Passage. Or I guess, yeah, you can just get the mana back after the passage anyway. Oh, Informant.
A little bit too expensive.
Well, not with the swing, right? You gain back the mana, just about get it down.
Oh, right. I keep forgetting about the Dark Glare.
The one thing I'm holding on to despite having no grasp of whatever else is going on.
Pretty clutch.
Okay, okay.
We'd rather get 2 minions down instead of 1 large one, which, to be fair, has a lot of utility against a deck that can generate Fizz Flash Distractors and that has access to Assassins.
Yeah, man, even then it felt like it maybe should have been Assassin instead of instead of Cult Neophyte to round out the turn, because it gets Scabs in hand, makes the Assassin in hand cheaper as well, and was just kind of more stats on board, whereas I feel like the Cult Neophyte effect is fairly small in this matchup, actually.
Although, to be fair, if Chonsu doesn't remove anything from this board, this is still a lethal setup from Posesi with the Battlegrounds Battlemaster in hand. He's currently threatening 12 on board, and the BGBM can add 6. So that does just become lethal.
Oh, well, I think Chonsu has to be considering that, right? He could make the play of saying, you just don't have Battlegrounds Battlemaster, and that, in the end, is exactly what he's doing. And so, I trust your maths. 12, 18, it's just GG, especially with the Shadow Step for even more damage, if that was necessary.
Oh, true. You could step the Dark Glare and then move the Wind Fury over to the Skulker. That's pretty cool. Reminds you of the good old days from Handlock. But that means Posesi finally gets his first win on the board. It is just a 50-50 that he's won. But as for Chonsu's remaining decks, I actually think Posesi is still in a pretty good position. We haven't had the chance to see that much Quest Rogue versus Libram Paladin, but in theory, I feel like the Quest Rogue should be a little bit ahead, even though our one streamed game kind of disputes that. And then we do know that the Rogue has a very good shot indeed versus Demon Hunter. So Posesi clawing back in there. This could be yet another reverse sweep.
Could be. We'll have to see, obviously, how the Paladin performs. We did see against Alan the other day in his final match in Grandmasters that he lost the Rogue versus the Paladin. And I do think that even though I would call it Rogue favored, really not that bad from the Paladin. Like, how weak they are to Saps and Assassins is, I think, a little bit overemphasized, because obviously when you first look at it, it seems like they would be, right? They play often one big minion a turn, which is exactly what Rogue wants to see. But their weakness to sap and assassins is dependent on them having a weaker early and mid game than the rogue. If the paladin keeps up in the mid game, sure, the rogue can sap and bounce and assassinate whatever they want. They're still going to be behind on board, and paladin is still going to kill them. So as long as Chonsu can find himself a couple of one drops, some buffs, maybe even just a timely Aldor Truthseeker on turn 5, even if he is being messed with in terms of his big minions, I think he should still be able to keep up.
Yeah, in fact, if we recall back to Chonsu versus Alan, just yesterday, he had the double Aldor Truthseeker in the opening hand. I think he was on coin that time, and he was really upset to see it because he thought that it would be too slow. But as it happened, he did have enough pressure to, or enough answers, I should say, to keep up with Alan in the early game. And it's the Truth Seekers that really caused him to pull ahead in the mid game, because you got so much repeated value from playing the Librams of Wisdom and then discounting the Librams of Hope to stabilize towards the end. Posesi here deep in the tank about the mulligan, though, ends up only holding on to SI7 Agent, which I think makes sense. Spy Mistress without Greyheart Sage feels a bit lackluster.
I mean, talking about needing to keep up in the early game at the moment, Chonsu is definitely going to be struggling to do so. A noble mount with no one-drop, Vindicators just so easily answerable most of the time in the form of SI7 Agent or the Extortion that Posesi has access to very frequently. The main hope here, I guess, for Chonsu is really just leading up into Lightforged Carriel and hoping the power of the hero power, plus obviously buying him so much time, will be able to get there.
Super interesting turn 2 for Posesi, though, because honestly, every single line here has merits, whether it's Skulker, Dagger, Neophyte, or Coin SI7 Agent. Of those, I least like Skulker, because the Neophyte would shut down any... Oh, sorry, no. This is going into 3 mana, right? Okay, at least like Neophyte. A buff spell would also still be available. So I do think Posesi should respect the 1/1 and its possibility of trading up either by coining SI7 Agent or going Dagger. And I did like SI7 Agent because he could just follow up with Skulker into Gizmo on the next turn. Although... going Skulker this turn, it does mean that even if there is a buff spell for Chonsu, he can't take a value trade because of the stealth. And Posesi thinks that against any potential buff spell, he will still have a clean answer, which is somewhat true. Noble Mount, I think, would be still a little bit difficult to deal with. But Chonsu instead goes for the Alliance Bannerman and ends up with Samuro, which is by and large the best card in the matchup. It allows him to deal with stealth minions and catch a lot of the smaller minions in the crossfire as well.
Just such a perfect top deck. This hand right now is just screaming for Samuro to give him some kind of a mid-game bridge before he's able to get down his later threats. I mean, even outside of the Samuro, it's not a great hand because he doesn't have any Librams anyway to cheapen those Librams either, but it's just so much time he's buying himself here. Samuro to clear the board, Carriel to half the damage, Lightforged Carriel that is, Mutinous the Devourer could even be not bad. Like it's not a ridiculous thing to expect that it could even chomp Scabs later on.
Paladin just favored? Are we just completely wrong? I don't know. It doesn't even look close right now. I mean, Posesi does have the capability of stealthing his minion. Yes, it's an 8/6, and he can have it go Wind Fury later on, but that's not enough to deal with Chonsu's perfect health total at the moment. And that's not even accounting for the taunts that Chonsu can put forth in the meantime. Looks like Posesi is reaching for Neophyte here, which... I'm not sure if it shuts down any specific spell, but maybe Posesi's thinking it shuts down new minion plus buff spell.
Yeah, I do think I just like the Fog Generator. Like, what are you expecting on turn 5? Realistically, it's Aldor Truthseeker is the most likely play, which this does not mess with at all. In the end, though, you know, here Stonehearth Vindicator is fine. Getting some more card draw with the Hand of Adal, with the Knight of Anointment as well. It just means that he's going to be getting closer and closer to those Librams of Hope that are so often the final nail in the coffin.
True. Posesi also with that second gizmo generated being another noggin fog, no fizz flash distractors. It's gonna be an uphill climb to actually keep pace with the paladin here. But maybe a secret passage off the top can help alleviate the pressure here. SI7 Assassin could still pull Posesi back in the lead because Chonsu still hasn't played any Libram discounters at least.
Noble Mount on the Vindicator, I think, is a decent way to kind of split up the threatage on your side of the board so that you're not too vulnerable to a sap.
Yeah, it doesn't look like he'll have a window to commit Noble Mount in the near future, so I do like this. Because it looks like next turn is Carriel plus 1 drop into turn 7 other Carriel. That's a secret passage though. Posesi needed that to have any real shot of staying in this game.
Okay, so coin passage. I don't think I'm interested in Wicked Stab on this turn. It's just a little awkward.
I agree.
And I'm not interested in VT re-stealth quite yet either.
It could be go face re-stealth. I was honestly looking at that.
Not absurd, yeah. Ooh, okay. That's pretty good.
Yeah, you can play the whole hand.
Oh, yeah.
It's not an assassin, but it's +1 SI card and +4 minions on the board, which is a huge deal in terms of trying to wrest back board control, especially since he's seen Samuro already.
Still no scabs in hand, but it's a very, very close second place. I do think you're supposed to go for a VT here on the Samuro, right?
I agree, even though it feels really bad. I mean, the original hand does have Battlegrounds Battlemaster, but this feels like a flimsy lethal setup if he leaves too much damage on board. But okay, going face, that's interesting. Okay, now it's not a flimsy lethal setup, it's a bold lethal setup.
Yeah, quite right. Next turn, what, 16 plus 6? It's exactly lethal next turn with the stealth plus the 8/6 if somehow Chonsu is not clearing them off. But as we can see, especially with that pickup of the Devout Pupil, there are many, many ways for Chonsu to fight back against this.
Yeah, between Pupil, Broom, or Carriel, I feel like he still needs to commit the Broom just to have that last 1 damage going in through the 8/6. Oh yeah, and then he trades the Vindicator first so he can rush the mount itself. Very nice. Posesi clearly not happy to see that his big gamble did not pay off in this instance, but there's still quite a few draws that can help him here. Assassin is a big one.
It's good, you know, because it gets to clear the board, but it does leave scabs in hand going into turn 7 with only one other minion in the hand. It's really scary.
Comp time, and even if the Mutinous misses scabs, it can eat Battlegrounds Battlemaster, which is a huge deal as well.
Yeah,
I mean,
this is going to be an insta-chompsu.
Chompsu, ha ha ha. Sounds like chop suey. Now I'm hungry. Okay, it's a full clear for Posesi, and to be fair, this is kind of a board that deters Chonsu just straight up going for Mutinous. Oh, he's not daggering up. Okay, he's just gonna leave minions stealthed. This is clever, right? Because in the case of Mutinous, if Scabs is eaten, he has the BGBM for +9 damage. Not quite lethal since the Neophyte is probably dead this turn, but it's a lot. And it jumps BGBM. Posesi feels even more upset to see that than Scabs. But yeah, Chonsu looks upset too.
Both players are sad with that outcome, but I think Chonsu should be kind of happy. I don't know. It's close.
Well,
maybe you'd rather skip the Scabs. If you're not dead,
yeah,
it's probably better.
Yeah, I think Posesi should be happy because, I mean, he wasn't pushing lethal with BGB. Oh wait, sorry, he was with the Wicked Stab at 1 mana. My bad. It would have just been lethal straight up if he kept it.
No, because he could have traded the Neophyte, right? And then it would have been 12.
Yeah, but he has Wicked Stab.
Oh yeah, sorry, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, Posesi saw that ages in advance, but he's still in a decent spot. You just Scabs and Fizz Flash the Mutinous, and you're so far ahead on board.
You are, yes. Some of the more powerful plays are starting to come online for Chonsu, though. If you use up your Fizz Flash, then obviously Libram of Hope becomes an absolute nightmare for you. And man, it's kind of close. You probably do use the Fizz Flash here. I'm just wondering if you can stealth up and leave everything stealthed instead, and they have Libram of Hope, you'd be pushing not quite lethal, but wouldn't be a million miles off either.
Right, but the thing is, leaving everything stealth doesn't have that much utility after you've seen Samuro, I want to say. So I like that he's unstealthing the Assassin, and I think you should unstealth the Spy Mistress as well. The problem is Barov, which would be able to clear a board, I guess not regardless of stealth, because it still needs to rush into something with a broom to actually pop. But here we can see the Barov has no way of activating, even though Posesi has unstealthed. And that means he is digging.
Wow, really? It's Cariel. I kind of thought that would be Libram on this turn.
Ariel does give him a bit of a clear. Decent. And the Scabs is only pushing 4. The Gyroblade is pushing 2.
4 plus 2, 6, 8 on this turn you can deal.
Right.
Plus 1, 9 actually. Yeah.
Why plus 1? Oh yeah, because of the Noggin Fog.
Yeah, yeah.
True. So, Smuggler. Alright. See what's in the box. Chonsu is so close to stabilizing. He is on the brink of stopping Posesi. But that's a pretty good outcome for a 6-drop Judicious Junior.
Jiu-Jitsu Junior. Very scary. I think that was... Maybe it was actually... No, it was probably Libram of Wisdom. I was going to say maybe the Bannerman, just because it's a little expensive to play alongside something else.
Yeah, I kind of like that as well. But to be fair, Posesi's seen 0 Libram discounters, so the Wisdom is still quite clunky as well. He is front-loading all of the damage. I think the Gyroblade should go in as well, because he's probably going to re-dagger the next turn, but maybe he's valuing the 3 damage from the Death Rattle to deal with a taunt minion. Okay, can Chonsu stay alive? Barov still not activatable. He goes back up to 18. He kills a Spyomatic, and he is down to 16.
Whoa. So there's 4, 5, 7,
13.
9. I count 11 with perfect.
I hate
efficiency.
Cariel math. So you can bump the shield with the 1/3. You can deal 6 to it with your Gyroblade.
Yes,
Yeah, you can mole in, and then so the Scabs, the Judicious Junior, and the Spy Mistress can all go face, which is 5 plus 2 plus 2, 9 damage, and then the Wicked Stabs together are dealing 4. It's 3 off that I count.
Yeah, okay. I counted either 2 or 3 off, but either way, it's not lethal. Okay, yeah, it's 2 off with the attack phase from... Oh, no, yeah, 3 off. Yeah. You're right.
Oh, man. Still
Close.
so tense, though, because Chonsu still has not been able to deal with the board, and now there's a secret that he has to contend with. Oh, it's been so long. Yogg has to be a concern for him.
Oh, man, that's true.
Noble Sack.
Aldor, Libram, even if it's Yogg, that's fine, because you can still play the Devout Pupil, which is the main one. But you could go Aldor, Libram. If it resolves, you can then go Hero Power plus Devout Pupil. I guess you can do that
right.
anyway.
Yeah, sorry. The Libram would go down to 0. So I do like that. Getting maximum taunts feels like the way to go. Posesi's completely stressed out. And who can blame him? Carriel math melts anyone's brain. Is there just a Varian line for Chonsu here? He can test Noble Sack with a weapon instead, and the Varian is just going to have still a rush, right? I think there's still a broom in the deck. Oh. Big buff. Huge buff. Goes on the Devout Pupil.
Oh,
Posesi.
it's so hard to chew through.
He needs an assassin again?
Yeah.
One left in the deck. Secret Passage still there as well. What does he find? Grey Heart Sage, no!
Oh, man. So he's
Nothing.
one off lethal, just straight up with the Wicked Stabs, right? Going face. He could instead go swing into the Divine Shield. Oh, you don't get any extra damage through. There's
No, you
no way to
don't.
get that one extra point. Oh my god.
He can only, like, trade away the 8/9, so he's not dead on board.
Yes, the lifesteal is important as well. Just
So
to
if he
give
wants
maybe
to-
one extra turn.
If he wants to maintain scabs, he can get this lifesteal and still be alive on board only just, right? But he would be dead to like Hand of Adal and other buff effects. So he is just gonna go for the full clear instead. Fair enough.
So he's just setting up for either no taunt or assassin off the top to deal with said taunt next turn.
Ashing in the damage now. Fair. These Wicked Stabs are never going anywhere else if Posesi wants to win the game. Oh man, Carriel has tanked so much damage by having everything.
Oh, that could get
Right.
him the Libram of Hope. Yep.
How likely is it? I don't know. I'm not going to count. Chonsu's just going in. What is the Holy Spell? It's a Libram of Wisdom.
Okay, but Variant can get him Devout Pupil, which cost 3 when he played it before. So if he goes double Libram, it will then be playable alongside it. And I think he's guaranteed to get it at this point.
Well, we'll see. There's the broom. There's the pupil. You're absolutely right. He has just built a huge wall of taunts.
So Posesi needs like passage into double assassin, like assassin shadow step, something like that.
Right. Is there a way he can generate damage? Literally 1 point of damage that can go face is still enough to win the game here. There's got to be some out with smugglers, right? Like passage into smuggler for Hala. I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know. I don't know how many SI7 cards are played, so I don't even know if it's going to summon an 8-drop, but I'm racking my brains for some sort of out. That is an extortion. That's a tradable. Oh my goodness. No! Chonsu wins 2 weeks in a row. The man is unstoppable.
Unbelievable. From an 0-2 start in Hearthstone Grandmasters, he goes back-to-back, winning 2 weeks in a row, finishes right at the top of the leaderboard, guaranteed first seed heading into playoffs, which gets him an auto win, guaranteed last call. That means even if he's not making it through to the World Championships in playoffs, you are going to see Chonsu for another season of Grandmasters in the last call, for another shot at the World Championship. But Posesi, even though he did end up taking the loss there after an insane loss in that first game with the Priest versus the Rogue, one of the most ridiculous games of Hearthstone I've ever seen, he is still in with a very good shot at making Worlds for another year in a row. He's going to playoffs. I think Posesi ends up in that middle, third or fourth spot below both Chonsu and okasinnsuke and Mighty as well. I think the order now just goes Chonsu, okasinnsuke, Mighty, Posesi in our top 4. So Posesi will not be given a free win nor a free loss heading into the playoffs in a couple weeks' time, but he is guaranteed that spot in playoffs, guaranteed that spot on last call as well, I believe, which means he is just looking honestly in a pretty good spot still to get that second World Championship performance 2 years in a row.
That would be an insane storyline indeed. Even though Posesi didn't end up taking the week, he can still hold his head high with a very, very solid performance and a potential Worlds appearance once again. But truly, the man of the hour is Chonsu. Imagine only having 3 weeks of play to earn points and winning 2 of them. The man is simply unstoppable, and we've talked about it. The play has just been on point recently. I guess I need to stop just doubting Paladin. If you put someone like Chonsu in the driver's seat, even a deck like that can get wins.
It can do indeed. Huge congratulations to Chonsu, as we will be looking forward to seeing him play not only in playoffs in a couple weeks' time, but I would hope also in the Masters Tour next week. Given that he's a Grandmaster, he will be qualified through to there to be playing in it. And of course, we wish the best of luck to our other players heading through to the playoffs next week. It is looking like we have a guaranteed top 8. I don't want to give official wording before our admins have had a chance to collate anything, work through any potential tiebreakers. But with Mighty, Chonsu, Posesi, and okasinnsuke looking to be in the top 4, I think that leaves us with Lambi Series, Alutemu, Shaxi, and Mega Gliscor as our remaining top 8, which, as we can see, there we go. Shaxi just managing to sneak in with Alan in 5th place there as well. Wow, my bad. Okay, so it's actually Mega Gliscor who just misses out in the end.
Yeah, pretty unfortunate despite seeing him perform pretty well on stream recently, but boy, oh boy, is this top 8 stacked. Chonsu well ahead of the pack with 2 full week wins despite going 0-2 in week 1. Doesn't matter if you just win the other 2. Very, very impressive stuff. Alan and Shaxi will have an uphill climb ahead of them in playoffs because they do start off with that auto loss. But for the likes of okasinnsuke through to Lambi, if the tiebreakers are final, I'm not quite sure yet. Maybe Mighty and okasinnsuke can still move around, but Alan and Shaxi set in stone. That will decide who will get that free win going into playoffs, and that could make all the world of a difference. I just want to say congratulations to Chonsu because it's truly been a revolution. I mean, this is the last true season of Grandmasters that we're having because Last Call is sort of truncated once again, and it's different from what we're used to seeing with all the regions put together. But I'm just so happy to see him come into his own after what felt like many seasons of not really hitting his stride. Something about the meta has worked for Chonsu. He's proved it on ladder, he's proved it in Grandmasters, and he is joining us in playoffs.
That's right. Pretty simple. Putting in the work, reaping the rewards. That's what we love to see from our Grandmasters in the couple of short seasons they have left. So congratulations to all of our players in the top 8. Cannot wait to see all of them duke it out in the playoffs in just 2 weeks' time after the Masters Tour for a quick break that we have before. That is us all done with the initial season of Grandmasters. As I said, obviously Master Tour next week, playoffs 2 weeks time to decide who the one player from each region going through to the World Championships shall be. I believe that heading into Europe we're starting a little bit earlier this or today, given that it is I think clocks changing for Americans. I don't know, some kind of time shenanigans are occurring here. But either way, I believe that it's going to be Europe coming up very shortly. So for all of us here, thank you for watching another week of APAC Grandmasters. Congratulations to Chonsu on his back-to-back victory. And we'll be back next week with the Masters Tour. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you then.
72 damage both times. And both times he left damage on the board.
Oh no! Where is cards green? Right for Myri's cards green! He got there! Oh, sick!
It's so powerful, all these rushes. I can't even believe the value he's got.
Labby with a pop-off. Well deserved. He stays in for another series.